Good evening, Yorktown, and welcome to the town board meeting for February 8th, 2022. We apologize for the delay. We were having technical difficulties, but we are happy to be here. If everyone could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United
States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice
liberty
for
and
all.
justice for all.
If we could just bow our heads in a moment of silence as we remember all of our first responders, our police officers, our firefighters, our EMTs, and our volunteer EMTs. We could also keep in our thoughts and prayers the men and women representing the United States in the Winter Olympics over in Beijing, China. And if we can also, as always, keep in our thoughts and prayers tonight the brave men and women serving overseas, protecting our freedoms, the men and women of the United States Armed Forces. Thank you.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen is right. Okay. We'll do introductions real quick because we are behind. As I see them, we have Councilman Ed Lachterman, Councilman Tom Diana, Councilman Sergio Esposito, Councilwoman Luciana Howitt, Town Clerk Diana Quast, and our Town Attorney Adam Rodriguez. Very quickly, again, because we're behind, just a couple of opening remarks. I do want to address some of the COVID-19 statistics. Our numbers continue to drop drastically. We heard from County Executive George Latimer earlier in the week, just yesterday. Same in the county. We're seeing the same across the state. We are expecting the governor to make an announcement tomorrow as it pertains to the state's indoor mask mandate. So we do intend on relaying that information as soon as we get it. And we're hopeful that we continue to make progress as a state in our continued efforts to recover from this terrible pandemic that we've done so well in overcoming. But again, as of tonight, our number is down to 256, considering we were well over 2,000 just last month. That's once again incredible progress, and we thank our residents and everyone involved for their efforts in helping us flatten this latest curve. Just quickly, we have heard from a number of residents regarding their Con Ed utility bills. I want to thank them for bringing this matter to our attention. I want to let the residents know that we requested Con Ed to join us tonight at our town board meeting. Unfortunately, they declined the invitation. We do know from some of the information that's been provided to us by Con Ed, and we heard the same from NYSEG at the end of last year, that the commodities market is really taking its toll on the cost of electricity. And what does that mean? That means natural gas, oil, the things that they need in order to produce electricity, just like everything else that we're seeing in the country these days and across the globe. The cost is just continuing to rise and continuing to rise dramatically. And so again, that's why a lot of people are unfortunately opening very steep utility bills from Con Edison this week. We know that our friends over at Jefferson Village, some of which have seen an increase of more than 200% in their bills, which is completely unacceptable. But again, that is a reflection of the current state of our economy. We are hoping to get some more information from Con Edison so that we can provide that to our residents. So again, there's some tools available that we're going to look to explore. Some residents have talked about the Westchester Power program. So I think the town board is interested in once again re-engaging in that conversation, which essentially would be a price lock in a sense. But we're going to work with our friends at Sustainable Westchester to bring that back to the table. But just know from government standpoint, and we've been through this before, as you remember, when there were rate hikes proposed in 2019, that the PSC, the State's Public Service Commission, is the entity that regulates all the utilities in the state of New York, not the town of Yorktown. And so I just want people to understand that. So when you see these rates that are increasing, first off, know that both Con Ed and NYSEG did receive the rate hikes that they had asked for, not at the exact level, but the PSC did approve rate hikes for both utilities in 2020. Do know also that Con Ed is proposing another set of rate hikes for Con Ed customers. And Yorktown is a bit unique because we do have both Con Ed and NYSEG territory here in the town of Yorktown. I think we're one of the few, if not the only municipality in the Hudson Valley that has that distinction. So we have that firsthand knowledge and experience of understanding the difference in services, the difference in storm response, and the difference in customer service. So we're more than happy to continue to advocate for our residents. We're more than happy to stand with our residents, to fight with and for our residents. But please know, again, that when it comes to the rates by the utilities, the town has no say in that matter. But we will, of course, work with our state partners to make sure that they understand the impact it's having. And it's having a significant one. There's no doubt about it. Whether you're a NYSEG customer or a Con Ed customer, the town of Yorktown absolutely recognizes that. On a brighter note, I just want to let people know that spring's around the corner, and here in Yorktown, that means maple syrup. And maple syrup weekend is coming back to the town of Yorktown. Bry Hart over at White Oak Farm is going to be hosting yet again. He's partnering with the Yorktown Grange. They're going to be hosting 2 weekends worth of pancake breakfasts. They've got maple tapping workshops. We've got some restaurants who are going to be introducing some maple syrup infused products. Whether that be our friends over at Furcy's, who are going to be featuring some maple syrup featured dishes, or some of our other local restaurants. But it's going to be an exciting month here in the town of Yorktown. Again, Yorktown, with thanks to Bry Hart and his farm, Yorktown and White Oak Farm is the only commercial producer of maple syrup in Westchester County, and the most southern commercial producer of maple syrup in the entire state of New York. And that's something that we're very proud of, and we thank Bry and his whole team for their continued efforts. And we're looking forward to celebrating a great tradition here in the town of Yorktown and expanding it for the month of March.
And Mr. Supervisor, the workshops are actually going on now. So if people want to sign up, we'll put some information up maybe.
Yeah, we're going to be sharing all the information for those workshops. They start next week. They're only tapping next week, so the following 2 weeks they're going to be doing those workshops, and then those 2 weekends in March for the maple syrup breakfasts. We're going to share all that information on the town's website. And I just want to make sure there was nothing. Oh, of course, silly. How can I forget? Congratulations once again to the town of Yorktown, especially our Yorktown Police Department. Monkey Geek is the latest survey that found Yorktown to be one of the safest small towns in the United States of America. We came in the top 10, the 9th safest small town in the country. And again, we know that we take great pride in our consistent recognition. This isn't the first time that we've received this type of recognition of being one of the safest places to live, work, and raise a family. But this goes again is a big tribute to the great Yorktown Police Department, who continues to meet and exceed the state's highest law enforcement standards. And so we're seeing it here again. And so to everyone who made that possible, a big thank you. And I will just share my screen quickly. If you haven't seen the article.
What is a monkey geek?
A monkey geek? It's
yes. Could you please explain that to us, Supervisor?
It's what you call Councilman Lachterman. No, I'm joking.
Good, Matt. Very good.
The latest news straight from, again, on the town website. But Monkey Geek analyzed the crime stats, quantifying the cost of crime and ranking small cities and towns nationwide in every single state. So they looked at things like violent crimes, looked at things like property crimes, and Yorktown again in the top 10. So a big thank you to Chief Noble and all of our terrific officers at the Yorktown Police Department.
Yes, thank you. I just wish it was a different name.
Yeah, hey, I don't make up the names.
I know.
We do have an exciting agenda tonight. A couple of great ideas, concepts, introductions that we want to make. So we're going to just turn it right over to our first guests, and we're going to welcome a number of the farm owners of Yorktown. We're going to welcome Jeff Thompson. We're going to welcome Tom Deacon. We have Lou Lanza, Scott Vaccaro, Joe Boetti, and Tom Albright, who are going to be joining us. And this is a conversation that I think the town board's very excited about, which is hopefully a new chapter for our local farms in Yorktown. And as a reminder, Yorktown has the most working farms of any community in Westchester County, something we take great pride in. And so I know that I see Scott joining us. See, we have Jeff Thompson of Thompson's Cider Mill here. Hey, Jeff.
I'm unmuted.
There you go.
How you
There
doing?
you go. Hey, Jeff.
Great to
Hey
see you.
guys. Hey Tom, how you doing?
Good, good.
All right, I see we got a bunch of people joining us now. There's Scott. There's Lou Lanza. We've got Laura Peterman.
Hello.
How
Hey,
are
Matt,
you?
I want to just thank the library for that wonderful bring your kid to the library.
Sure. As everyone's joining, yeah, that's a great idea. We did have a great with the John C. Hart Memorial Library this past weekend. It was bring your child to the library, and they once again the John C. Hart Memorial Library knocked it out of the park. They had so many great activities for the kids. I know that my kids had a great time. I think Luciana, you brought your kids. Sergio was there.
So was Sonic the Hedgehog.
He enjoyed his time with Sonic the Hedgehog. Yes, he did. But again, the John C. Hart Memorial Library really excited to be back in person, letting people in and enjoying the great services that they offer for our community and for the surrounding communities as well. So make sure you check them out. And thank you again, Councilwoman Howitt, for reminding me of that.
It's also
Maybe Monkey.
Just a special shout out. It is Black History Month, and there's a lot of cool events going on all over Yorktown. We'll try to put some of those up too, because there's a lot of really nice things going on, and it's we really need to shout that out.
Awesome.
Maybe we can get
Diana?
Monkey Geek. Maybe we can get Monkey Geek to show up the same place with the hedgehog.
Yeah, Monkey Geek and the Hedgehog. Yeah, no
And the
problem.
hedgehog.
It's too funny. All right, so we have a number of our guests with us. Louis, you want to introduce your team?
Yes, I'm Louis Lanza. I'm a Peekskill guy, and we're looking to do some farming and event business in your beautiful town finally after these years. So with me tonight is Todd Albright from Princeton Realty, and Scott Vaccaro from Captain Lawrence, and Joe Boydie from Village Social and a bunch of other restaurants in the Westchester area. And we're looking at this project as a team effort to do something fun and exciting. At our age, we have to do things fun, right?
That's right. And Louis, didn't I tell you when about 2 years ago I called you up and I said, I know you're a Peekskill guy, but you're going to be coming to Yorktown soon. Didn't I tell you that was going to happen?
I remember those words. I do remember those words.
And I think, and Joey, do you want to be called Joey, or we're going to call you Giuseppe?
You can call me whatever you want.
Love that. Okay.
Joe's much easier.
And
But
Louis,
We're
I'm
not
gonna
appreciate
tired
that
of those heavy
you-
names, don't you
I
worry.
appreciate it that you can pronounce it properly.
and Louis, I'm going to tell our good
Appreciate
friend
it.
Joe Torres.
I
that
can
you're
see
coming
you
to
guys. Can you
Yorktown.
guys see me?
That's okay.
No, your camera's off.
No, Joe, your camera's off.
All right. Let's. There we go.
Joe's technical.
Hey.
Now we can
There
see
he
you,
is.
buddy.
All right.
There you are.
So
Good
Lou,
evening,
do
everybody.
you want to? So you introduce your team. Are you going to speak for your team, or Todd? Are you taking the lead?
Todd will start. He's much more professional than me. I'll let Todd go.
No, we just have a collaboration. We were introduced to the farm, and we see just some great things there, underutilized, and between Joe's restaurants and Louis' restaurants, we've all been farm to table. And Scott has been, always interested in doing a little bit more in a farm setting also. So we just thought this would be a great place to, it's started. It just needs to be a little bit more nurtured. Part of, whether it's the pandemic or what have you, but obviously I'm sure you're aware that farm events are popular, or more popular than they were, whether it be a wedding, whether it be an outdoor, whatever meeting. It just gives a different thing, and we just think that the timing is right, and we think it could be fun for children of all ages. We trying to figure out if there's a possibility to have all of the Yorktown farms do maybe like a little farmers market in some capacity, and some fall harvest things. So just kind of noodling around a bunch of stuff. And what we do realize is, a tent is necessary to kind of house any of these events.
Right.
I think that's it in a nutshell.
So I know our conversations we were talking about again, the potential of weddings and some of those types of events. And I think John Tegeter's on, our director of planning, and it got us thinking about the potential, again, knowing all the different farms across our community, giving them the ability to do something similar. I think would be advantageous both for each farm from a business standpoint, but also from the town standpoint. Agritourism is a big driver, and agritourism, as we know, you put real money back into the community that the farms in. So I think it could be a great asset and a great opportunity for a lot of our farms. And so, John, we were talking about the need for a special use permit to allow farms to be able, who are interested, because not all of them can do it. We talked to Brightheart. I talked to Brightheart today, not just about maple syrup, but also about this. And he thought it was a great idea. His farm may not be suitable for a wedding, but he thought it was a fantastic concept for the farms that could take advantage of it. And so I think that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about today, right?
Yes.
So to the town board, thoughts on creating a special use permit for our farms to be able to host weddings or large events? Yeah, Councilman Diana.
I think that it's a real good thing. I've been to a couple of the events that have been on farms in other jurisdictions. A couple were upstate where there were wedding venues held in the barn with it was just a unique atmosphere that kind of made a wedding that, well, you like wedding, Supervisor, I know that, it made it wasn't the staunch rank and file meet your bongos wedding that you usually get. It was kind of it was a country feel, and I think that's what this will generate in the town of Yorktown, where we are mostly country. So may not be quite your style, Supervisor, but
I'd have a great time. Don't you worry about me.
I know. We'll let you all know someday.
Councilman Esposito.
So, guys, step me through. So I understand there's a bunch of restaurateurs here, right? So you guys are the owner of the Village Social, Louis Lanza, you have a bunch of things in Peekskill. So how do you guys plan on, collaborating? I mean, who's actually running the wedding venue at any one given time? Is it like a company you guys are forming together, or do you guys say, okay, I'm doing next Sunday, you do next Saturday, I'm doing Friday? How's it work?
I think, Sergio, I'll start with that. I think between Scott and Louis and I, we all bring different, styles of cuisine and entertainment to the industry, and to nurture people's needs. It's a real collaboration. It may be themed with maybe food trucks, possibly something that's not so typical, outdoor type cuisine, cooking with wood. Creating an atmosphere that brings us back to, our ancestry, and not being such a typical standard, indoor formal event. As Tom was saying, it's not about making it a typical, wedding venue. Really, bringing back what we come from.
So what restaurant do you own, Giuseppe, Joe?
I'm involved in Village Social in Mount Kisco. We have Pub Street in Pleasantville. And then we have our Locali concept, which is primarily a pizza-focused wood-burning pizza that's in New Canaan and also in Mount Kisco.
When are you coming to Yorktown with the Yorktown Social? I'll even give you
That's what I want to know.
So I'm not kidding.
We're trying to get rid of a couple. Maybe we'll come that direction. This may be a good inspiration if you let us into town.
We'd love to have you. So you guys would be working together on every venue? Is it on?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
I mean, there's already a working farm in place with Tom. Sundial is the farm, and then you have Fable Farm. So we've been working with the farmers and trying to utilize their products for the Yorktown, but obviously for our events. I mean, it's almost, I had a fully functioning farm in Garrison for 10 years, and we have an artisanal cheese barn. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd love to bring the goats and the cheese and start making it on premise in Yorktown and be able to offer it to the farmers market and to our consumers. I mean, it's the ultimate farm to table. I mean, a lot of people talk about it. With this property and with the existing farm and the greenhouses they have, there could be a lot of collaboration between us as food guys and with the farmers. And then, New York City and people are right around the corner. It's a nice venue if you don't want the traditional sit down wedding like a lot of people do. We're definitely not those guys. We do a fun, friendly, get in there and try different kinds of food and all sorts of fresh products. It's a new style of wedding. I mean, I think we're never going to try to compete with the catering halls. I have one myself. Believe me, we do it, but this is
I think it sounds like a great idea. Just two more questions. One question is, will you be sourcing your farm to table produce and stuff like that primarily or initially from Yorktown Farms?
That'd be great. That'd be incredible. That would be yes.
All right. And secondly, what about the farmers? How do you guys feel about it? Can we hear from them?
We do have some other farmers on, Jeff and.
I can comment on this a bit. I mean, I think as a concept for farms in Yorktown, and I can tell you it's being done, for example, up at Outhouse Orchards in North Salem. There's a big part of their business now. They have the space for it. My property is very small. So I don't know how much I could do with it, but as a concept, I definitely support it. By the way, I did get married on my property, but no permits, no permit. Well, I got a permit from the judge, but whatever.
Right.
But no, it's legal. It is.
Jeff, say nothing further.
That's stop right there, big guy.
But I'm very familiar with Fable Farm and Sundial. I go back a long way out here. I've lived in the T-Town neighborhood. I don't want to tell you how long, but it's well over 40 years. And the cider mill is over 40 years old. And for the last 2 years, we've had, I've subleased from Tom at Fable, space there in what they call the horse rink. Why it's a rink, I don't know. That usually involves ice, but apparently, so it's a horse rink, not a ring. And so we've had a tent over there to sell our apple cider and baked goods. We're in the hard cider business now, so that's over here at the cider mill. But anyway, without that, I'll tell you, it's been a really great location for that. So, as I say, for farms to have these opportunities for the weddings, I think it makes a lot of sense, frankly.
Tom, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree with Jeff as well. I think it's important. I mean, as a farmer myself, it's hard to grow organic produce. You're dealing with Mother Nature here, so any extra income we can bring in is incredibly helpful. I mean, the area that Jeff was talking about is our educational field. So, I mean, between education and farming, as you know, it's not the most profitable venture, but we believe in it and we want to continue doing it. So having access to hosting events and weddings is great. It's beneficial. And I also think by working with other small businesses, local bakers, local event planners, local florists, it's a win-win for everyone. So
awesome. Great.
So Tom, just to let everybody know what farm you're from.
Yeah, I'm with Fable.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just have a question before we go on. So I guess this could go to Louis or to Giuseppe or to whoever, or maybe just Todd. When is the venue is going to be zoned for weddings? And I keep hearing weddings and other events, which is also celebrations. So is this something where it would be celebrations, or are we calling in like DJ Surge and throwing like freestyle
DJ
night?
Surge.
So like what
DJ Surge. Wow.
I mean,
DJ
I could date
Surge.
myself a little bit. I'm just wondering, like, is this something where you guys are looking to launch? I mean, marriages are interesting these days, how they're done. So, I mean, are you looking?
Mm-hmm.
We're not running like the surf club. So, what are you guys are thinking as well? Are the celebrations solely like family orientated and farm orientated, or is this going to be also a place where people can, bring in events and just rent the space?
I mean, like birthday party, like a 50th
Yeah, exactly, like a birthday party,
or
a charity event,
anniversary, or yeah.
Absolutely, Luciana. I think as long as, if anything's tastefully done, we would introduce anything to the property as long as it was under, our umbrella and we were able to have our finger on the pulse to make sure that it was something that, reflected who we are as business owners and being involved in the community.
So what's the nice part about it is that, like, I find that Yorktown has, we're a really nice melting pot. And the one thing that I think is really interesting is that we don't really have a place to gather. And we have a place to kind of like get together and just mingle in the sense of like where we can be creative. I mean, we have beautiful pubs and restaurants and those, but we don't have an open space that's large enough. I mean, the Legion can hold so many people and so on, so on. So I've seen Village Social, I've rented it out for business events and whatnot. And I was able to bring in my own DJ. So I didn't know if this was kind of one of those places where you guys are looking where we're not just saying it's a permit for wedding use, where it's for special use that would also involve the community to use where nature meets our bouginess, like where we can bring a party and still be part of what Yorktown has, which is these beautiful, beautiful farms, these beautiful trails, this beautiful land. So I didn't know if that was something that was in the model.
Let me speak. I think these are all great ideas. I think the number one thing, and we're being an event business and having neighbors, is you have to respect your neighbors, and you got to kind of control what comes in there, because you don't want a bunch of upset neighbors, and that's what it comes down to. Building a place out right and doing and proper soundproofing around the stage, whatever. But nothing worse than bringing in DJ Surge and giving them a free free base, and next thing you know, we have a lot of unhappy neighbors. So we want to be there long term.
Yeah, no, I respect that. I love that. Thank you.
And Luciana, I just want to address, we did part of that pie that we're looking at. There's only about 10 weekends or Sundays or whatever for weddings. What do you do with some of the infill? We do have children, and and I think Tom touched upon it. There's so many more ways, right, in the fall. Whether it's pumpkin patch or Easter egg hunt, or like really bringing the community in there for whatever reason it would be. And we kind of look at the calendar, yes, there's maybe 10 weekends that you could possibly do a Sunday or something like that way. But what do you do on the other thing, whether it's a chamber meeting, whether it's, we talked about, education. Louis loves his goats, and maybe there's goat rides or whatever they do. Goat yoga. Goat yoga.
Louis, you might want to just leave that comment from Todd.
I'm sorry. It's a donkey ride. A donkey ride, not a goat ride.
So I had a couple of questions, and I think you may have just answered one of them, which is the plan to build a structure for an indoor venue, or is it a tenting type of thing? What was the thought process?
It's a
tenting.
It'd be a tent.
Okay. So, all right. And then, and this, I think we're looking at globally all of the farms, if I'm,
Right.
So, I think it's a great idea for uses. And, my daughter got married up in Vermont, in an old barn on a farm that they renovated and made a beautiful wedding venue space. And she used to live in New Hampshire, where they had a house on the farm similar to like Hanover, Hilltop Hanover, and that was converted into a breakfast place for the weekends. And it was jam packed, and they produced everything right there at the farm. And since then, in every meeting I've been in with the farming community in Yorktown, those are like visions that it's like I'd love to see come to pass. But it's very similar. The one in New Hampshire, there's a symbiotic relationship between the business and the farm. And, I think that's really important. And I'm hearing something that, that there's use of what's now the educational center at the farm, which is pretty important. And I hear you talking a little bit about that. So would programs like Tom's program still be able to be implemented? Would you be able to work together symbiotically to make sure we don't lose that farming aspect and that farming community?
1000%. That is exactly what we intend to do. We even talked to some artisanal craft people, things like that. There's lots of pieces of the farm and how do you use it, and the main building is great. If it just needs some TLC, but yes, completely. It's a farm, and that's the attraction. Yeah, you got to just improve on the farm.
Right, but I think Adam, Matt, and Luciana, Sergio, Tommy, when we talk about this, I think that's important to try to put into the code that we don't that our farms don't disappear. That it's
Right.
not a free for all to say let's just take that land and develop it, especially because the educational aspects are so great. As Todd pointing out, Louis' affection for goats. Having the kids be able to go to a petting zoo is really important. I still remember those times from being a kid.
The owners of the
Scaring us, Ed.
the owners of the property are adamant about keeping it a farm, and they're in their 90s, late 80s and early 90s. This is what whatever happens in the next 20 years, whoever ends up with this,
Open the mic, Carol. I'm
What
sorry,
they-
I thought it was muted. I'm sorry, go on. I just asked my wife to stop a beeping thing.
that's their intent to whoever they end up leasing or selling or whatever the property to. They're going to want to keep it that way. It'll be part of their contract.
Great, and I hope that it's a vision. Louis, I've seen some of the great things you've done down in Peekskill, and you've worked a lot with the Lincoln Depot Museum, and you have a love of history and all of that. So, I hope that when Matt coerces you to come to Yorktown, that we don't lose some of that passion from you.
Keep Lincoln beer crawl.
There you go.
I know one of my daughters also wanted to have a barn wedding, and we ended up looking at a couple of them upstate. And in and around where they had the barn, where they had the venue, they were still raising horses and cattle and so on and so forth right around the venue. Basically, that gave it its unique charm. The horses would basically almost come right up to where the building was, where the wedding was taking place and so forth. And then they had a couple older off buildings, like where the groom could get changed, and the bride, where the bride and groom drive up into, and they have their little party before they walk in and so on and so forth. So I think it is very important we have an active farm community in and around the venues.
How many farmers are in Yorktown?
Jeff, what's the number we said? I think it's is it 8?
Oh wow!
I would say there's at least 8, and there's more active farms, working farms in Yorktown than there are in any other town in the county.
That's great.
And it really, and that property, Louis, as I'm sure you know, is the oldest working farm in the town, going back to the 1740s, 1750s. It's even before I was born, and so it's really, and what Tom was just saying about the weddings, you got the whole idea of these farm weddings. I know I'm preaching the choir, but you got to have the farm there. So, that's really important. I do want to comment just one more time about, I think Lou or one of you mentioned the idea of the local produce, and that's an important feature of this thing. As much as we can support the local farms like Tom and what he's doing there with the chickens, the eggs, the vegetables, everything, it's very impressive, and everybody needs all the help they can get in that. It's not my primary source of income, so it's not like I'm really in it that way. But as I say, I think it's important. Everything we can do to support agriculture in Yorktown is important, not only emotionally, but to the town economically, because it's a unique asset. Matt's
a lot of times when you cross over into other farms, as Jeff's saying, whether it's Hemlock Hill, whether it's Wilkins or Jeff's or Tom, you guys always you carry each other's produce and products there to help promote each other and help each other out. So I think it's a really important point for Louis and his team to understand that, moving forward.
We agree 100%.
Can I have our? Go ahead, Supervisor.
Oh, go ahead, Councilman.
I was going to say, could I have our town planner weigh in on this a little bit? What do you think, John?
I think going to a wedding on a farm is a nice thing to do.
There we go.
Right.
That's one thumbs up.
That being said,
JT would be the best date. He'd be the best date. He's just showing up.
I think it's a nice idea. Of course, the rubber hits the road when we write the special permit language. Right. I think we have to be cognizant of writing something that doesn't allow things that you didn't expect, or as Mr. Lanza had anticipated, may upset people in that neighborhood. So we have to be careful of that. It may require some type of limiting language so that it's used properly. I think that's really what it comes down to. So
Okay.
that's really going to be the meat and bones, I think, Tom.
Yeah, that's the wordsmithing that he and Adam can tackle. But I think that's probably the next step is start drafting the language to create the special use permit, and we can come back as a board and vet it and then move it through that process.
I think that was well said by John.
Sounds good.
That's why we make sure he's on, Jeff.
Jeff, we keep him around for a couple little things, you know.
Yeah, okay.
Awesome. Well, Louis and your entire team, Joe, Scott, Todd, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time. We apologize for the delay. Jeff and Tom, thank you so much for joining us as well. But thank you for bringing this to our attention. It's something that I think it seems the board's very supportive of trying to move forward.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
I'll get
Thanks,
the
everybody.
Ciao, buonasera.
Ciao, buonasera.
Joe, don't forget the Yorktown Social. I even got a spot for you. Yes, call me.
We'll follow up with Joe. No problem. Thanks, Lou.
Thank
See
you.
you guys later.
Have a good night.
Take care.
Bye.
All. Good night.
Take
All
care.
right. Our next guest, we're gonna welcome our good friend Tom Panic of Guiding Eyes for the Blind, President and CEO. We have with us, I see we've got Bill, who has a great Bill. How are you doing with those Google glasses? They're the Google headphones.
Waiting for the weather to break so we can get those lines down.
All right, I can't wait. And we got Joe Rena and David Steinmetz, and I see John Donnelly as well, and Laura Peterman, of course. Hello, Laura. David, I'm going to turn the reins over to you on the presentation. Is that okay?
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, members of the town board. David Steinmetz from the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz. Good to be here this evening. Good to be back before all of you, and certainly good to be here tonight representing Guiding Eyes for the Blind. The supervisor did a nice job of introducing our team. Just so everyone does know, Tom Panic is the president and CEO of the organization. Bill, as you can gather from the Google glasses, is our head of technology and operations. Laura is our chief of staff, and John Donnelly, I'm pleased, was able to join. He is the head of the Guiding Eyes board. Joe and I were retained by Guiding Eyes in connection with the property that you're probably all familiar with at the intersection of 202 and Mohansick Avenue. We're here because Guiding Eyes needs to address some current concerns and needs of the organization. They are looking for an additional location for a canine kennel and associated facility. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. The property, for those of you that may not have been on the board or following things several years back, the property is 12 acres. It's located in the planned interchange zone in the town. And it went through the process before the town board and the planning board a number of years back, where Temple Israel was seeking to have a synagogue for Temple Israel. It would contain a sanctuary, a religious school, associated parking for the school, for events, parties, etc. It was obviously never built. The site is presently undeveloped. It was on the market. It is on the market. And Guiding Eyes thought it was a terrific location for what they need and what they would like to do. We're going to walk you through briefly, and Tom and John are going to explain some of what's going on with Guiding Eyes. I think probably everybody on the town board is quite familiar with the organization, having been in the town for so many years. And Guiding Eyes would like to continue to remain in Yorktown, remain successful in Yorktown. And I've learned from Tom and Bill and Laura that the need for the seeing eye dogs and the special care and training that they provide has probably only grown throughout COVID. And they'll talk a little bit about that. The site, as I said, is in the planned interchange zone. The planned interchange zone does not presently permit canine kennels. So we're here. We spoke briefly with staff and the supervisor. We have not filed any application, but we wanted to talk to all of you about the needs, about the site, and get a sense of the town's interest in proceeding with this. We can only proceed with this application with some form of relief from the town board. John Tegeter and I have had a few brief conversations about the zoning, about the options for how we could proceed, but none of it really gets off the ground without your involvement and your interest in the site. So what we would like to do is introduce a little bit about the history, very briefly, of Guiding Eyes, so that everyone on the town board, including the new town board members, are clearly familiar with Guiding Eyes, what it has presently in the town. And I should say right at the outset that one of the attributes of what we're seeking to do is to reduce some of the use and some of the number of canine on the Granite Springs Road location now, and bring them over to a different location, as well as introduce additional dogs and additional training and work. One of the other things I want to try to accomplish tonight with the help of Guiding Eyes is to make sure everybody knows just how many people work for Guiding Eyes in the town of Yorktown, many of whom live in Yorktown, but come in every day, work in Yorktown, and how many volunteers are involved with this amazing organizations. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom. We do have a short little PowerPoint that we're going to share with you. Joe Rena and I are more than happy, after we walk through the presentation, to get into some of the details of the site, conditions, as well as the zoning if you wish, and certainly to answer any questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom to kick it off from here.
Thank you, David, and thank you all for taking the time to meet with us tonight to talk about, first of all, our legacy and mission very briefly, and second of all, our investment in the community over the years, and finally, our current needs. I'll start out with a little bit on legacy and mission and ask our board chair, John Donnelly, who's been a resident of Yorktown, a longtime supporter of the school, to help me out with my presentation. Our mission, as you all know, is to provide guide dogs to people who are blind or have other visual impairments. And, we've been doing that for a long time. We started in 1954 with that mission. And since then, we've served 8,000 people who are visually impaired across the country. We have currently 900 people that are blind that are working with a guide dog, myself included. I have a Yellow Lab guide dog named Blaze. And we have, as David mentioned, and as Matt knows, I know Jenna is one of them, more than 1,400 volunteers in the community that help us accomplish our mission. So it's an incredibly longstanding charity that's doing a lot of good work around the country. And people come here to Yorktown, to our town, to receive the benefit of a guide dog at no cost. We breed more than 500 puppies annually, and that happens at the Patterson facility. And that particular facility, we had an opportunity to, we call it the Canine Development Center. That's where the puppies get their first steps, let's say. And, we've done a lot to invest in the Patterson location. There's a picture up there of kind of the 1970s version of it. And then some of the renovations that we've done circa 2015 when I first came on board to really fit in within the residential community and that community as well. But as you know, our central presence where the dogs get trained, where the people come to live on campus with us, is right here in Yorktown Heights. So I'll turn it over to John to kind of describe how things work where we are today.
Yeah, I would, as Tom mentioned earlier, first of all, I'd like to thank the board for taking time tonight to listen to us and to consider what we'd like to do. But we've been in Yorktown for, over 60 years, and we've made several upgrades to the main campus and the kennels and things like that. We're very fiscally conservative and careful about what we do. But we've had a need now for several years really to expand our footprint because we have an ability now to serve more blind and visually impaired people than we do today. And we want to do that without compromising quality or the special care that we give to the students and things like that. But so we thought about this for many, many years. And in order to do so, we need more kennel capacity than we have today. And we love where we are in Yorktown. We don't want to move, but we really can't do anything more than we've already done on the land that we occupy today. And so it's impossible for us to go up. It's impossible for us to expand the footprint because of wetlands and other things. So we've wanted to do this for a long time, but we waited till we thought we were financially sound enough that whatever we do, we could do in a first-class way, and that whatever we do will be permanent. So if we're able to acquire property like this and build a facility like that, I can't guarantee anything in life, but our plan would be to be there, forever. Just like we plan to operate this school in a way that it'll be there for another 60 years or longer. So we've been looking for a property so that we can build, a new kennel, probably a new vet hospital there as well. And we've been looking all over. We've looked at Reader's Digest. We've looked at different properties. We've looked at properties that would have to be converted. But we're also very excited because our needs are so unique and so different. We're very excited to be able to build something, because just like technology has changed, including technology to help blind people, the technology and what people have learned about kennels has changed dramatically over the years too. So to build a brand new one is really just a great opportunity for us. And to be, I believe it's less than 3 miles from our main facility is a huge additional benefit for us. So we are, we got very excited about this property when we looked at it. And as we continue to dig deeper, we're very excited about the possibility of doing a major project there. I'll turn things back to you, Tom.
Thanks, John. And as David alluded to yesterday, and as John mentioned, the need is continuing to grow, particularly in recent years. We serve veterans, we serve people with multiple disabilities. It's something that we've been able to expand on in terms of the level of service that we provide. And as John mentioned, we're at a point where the kennels that we have on campus circa 1960 are really in need of being able to keep the health and the well-being of the dogs, which is our most important function as we train these animals, these very special animals, to keep them as healthy and well as possible. And so we are, as John mentioned, very excited about this opportunity. We do have, a couple of thoughts about how we would be able to mitigate sound and make sure that we're being responsible neighbors, as we have been over the years in our current facility, and we'll continue to be members of the community. One of the things that John mentioned is we recently had the wonderful grand opening of the center in town, our welcome center, our outreach center. The Supervisor Slater was there to welcome in the community, and it's a place where we can welcome not only our volunteers, but give our volunteers a place to go to meet and to learn more about the organization, as well as individuals that want to get involved with the organization, so we can continue the great work that we do. Economic impact: we have 89 people within our operations currently that work every day in Yorktown. About half of those are within a 10-mile vicinity. And we have a great deal of presence in the town, along with, as we mentioned, 10 times the amount of staff members for volunteers. So we do want, as John mentioned, stay in the town. We love Yorktown. We love what it represents. And we're really proud to bring people from around the country to this location to train with a guide dog. And I'll stop there and talk about some of our specific needs, and also have the benefit of having Joe on our team helping us with site planning and design, should we be privileged enough to build on that property. And also David to answer any specific questions that the board may have at this point in time.
And there's a picture up, Tom, of the Commerce Street Outreach Center that we just recently opened.
So Tom, I just want to ask you, I know that there's a kennel in Patterson for the puppies, and
Yes.
then they get moved to the one in Yorktown, right, John? Right? So is this,
The two facilities have been there for about the same period of time. We breed the puppies, and it's a very different facility.
yeah, I've been there
There's
actually. So,
very
yeah.
different type of people working there and things like that. So, yeah, we breed the puppies over there, and then we train the dogs, and we train the students, and the students live with us on Granite Springs Road.
And also the vet is also on the one in Yorktown, correct? There's two
Yes,
separate.
and
yeah,
the main vet hospital is there, but the vets, we have several vets on staff, and they will spend time over in Patterson periodically. And if we have an issue over there, or if we have to do a special surgery or something like that, they go back and forth, but they spend the majority of their time with the adult dogs at the Yorktown facility.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I remember there was like two phases of it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great.
So the property is pretty much, so other people understand, I think we're talking about the property across the street from like Lowe's, right? Like in that
Right.
area. That's right to the right of the mobile gas station.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And about 12 acres?
It's
Correct.
12 acres. We assume that about 8 of those would be developable, and we would have an entryway through Mohansick Avenue off of 202.
Yeah, there's a picture up right now. This is Crompound Road, and this is where Mohansick is. And this is the existing mobile gas station in the top right.
Right.
So the property surrounds the mobile station, and you can see it also surrounds the sign facility right there. And just one point of clarification, I don't know if Tom or John said it, but somebody mentioned the notion of veterinary hospital. I just want everyone to be clear. We're not talking about a veterinary hospital open to the public or anything of that nature. This is strictly for the veterinary needs of the
Sorry,
guiding
yeah,
lines dogs.
that's true, Mr. Steinmetz.
What would be? No.
I just know that's a separate building because of like sanitation and whatnot. That's all.
Understood. Yep.
So this facility would be, you would have older dogs here, or this would be where you would be breeding the puppies as well?
This
No,
would
we
strictly
we wouldn't do any breeding here, but when the dogs are about starting a year old, we start to train them. We do some training on location. Then, when they get to be about 18 months or 2 years, the dogs that succeed are ready to be placed with a blind or visually impaired individual who will come to the campus and live with us for several weeks and be trained one-on-one with the dog that we think is a great match for that person.
And that training happens off of Gomer Street there.
Exactly.
So the building and you guys do such a fantastic job, and you're a great community partner. So I really appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
So how big would this building be? Step me through the building and on the new building on the new piece of property.
So our hope would be that we would be able to build not a one large kennel like we have now, but it's common now to have more of a individual approach to the dogs. So you keep the dogs together in smaller classroom-like settings where they would be housed. The maximum footprint of the building that we would build in that location would be around 30,000 square feet at the largest.
One building.
One building, yes. Presumably, we could do the building in a shape that would mitigate sound, that would direct the sound towards 202. We're very, and have been over the years, very thoughtful about how that building would be situated on the property. But we would be looking to build one building.
And Tom, if I can just follow you and respond to Councilman Esposito for a moment. We spent a fair amount of time before we even decided to come before the town board talking about how this might best work on the site. Tom's already indicated, based upon new technology and state-of-the-art design for canine kennels and There is the ability to soundproof the buildings, direct sound, if any, in a particular direction towards the commerce or the commercial area of 202. That's definitely something. We're completely mindful of what the surrounding area is, and that as part of the review process and SECRA, we would certainly be looking at mitigating visual, sound, and other impacts, and trying to pull the development area as far to the north as possible and be mindful of the residential neighbors to the south. And with 12 acres and the topography that we have, we believe, working with your professional staff and with the planning board, we can mitigate and address those impacts. The interesting thing is, you can see from the illustration you have before you, there are some constraints on the property in terms of wetlands that we think we can respect and deal with properly. And again, I just want to remind all of you, this site was proposed and approved to be substantially redeveloped with a significant building, a significant parking area, and quite a bit of vehicular movement associated with the synagogue use.
So visually, if I'm looking at, because I'm sure you guys have a plan in your head already. So visually, if I'm driving down 202 and whatever direction I look to my right and I see your building, for me, it's very important that it looks aesthetically pleasing from the street. Because, one of the big things I have a problem with a lot of the buildings in Yorktown is I feel they were all built backwards. So, and that's a pet peeve of mine. So, I mean, we're talking that directing the sound and all of that, but the building would still be visually pleasing from the street, correct?
Yes.
It sounds insignificant, but it's important.
It wouldn't look like it's a kennel, but it wouldn't look like a kennel. It would be a visually very attractive first-class facility, constructed to the highest standards. And, they're absolutely spotless, everything from the air handlers and how frequently we change the air out of the building to how frequently they're cleaned and things like that. But from the outside, in our mind, it would look more like a school than.
Bill, do you have the Patterson facility facade?
Someone would think about as a kennel, but this is, the look that we have in our facilities like Canine Development Center. It would look something, we would plan something. We haven't done any work yet, but it would be an attractive looking facility like that.
I'll tell you, I haven't been to the Patterson facility in well over a decade. When I first started going there, because we did this is Tom Diana speaking here. I did the puppy socialization and ultimately raised the dog for 2 years. And this has expanded exponentially since I first started going up there in the early to mid 90s. It was basically a house there that you walked into, and then you were brought around and into where the puppies were. The puppy room, my gosh, it wasn't much bigger than 12 by 12 room. And then you had the kennels where there was just piles of puppies. It was a kid's dream when you first walked in there. And I think I'm allowed to do this, and I don't know if you folks will see it, but this was the dog I raised. This was Nacho. With his sight impaired, Linda Chung, who was from La Cunha, California. I tell you, I have a very soft spot in my heart for Guiding Eyes for the Blind. I think it is a wonderful organization. I have yet to see anything that they have done that has been distasteful, not done 100% or the right way. I'm sure, Mr. Panic, you could probably tell me a bunch of things that they did wrong that you straightened out for them. But
Tom, you're bringing me to tears. I truly appreciate you volunteering and changing that person's life. It wouldn't be possible without. I'm just saying this because I need to say this to you, without people volunteering to take the dogs into their home, and that's what this organization is all about. So thank you.
Yeah, we even took them several years ago, a couple of Christmases, to give the folks a break. We took a few puppies for Christmas time, so that there wasn't as many in the kennel, so that not as many staffers had to come in to take care of those. And when I say literally piles of puppies, that's what's there. There's you want to take them all home. I mean, God, how could you not? But yeah, it's such a great community partnership that we've had with Guiding Eyes from the Blind from the time when I was a canine officer with the Yorktown PD, when we used to bring our dogs over there for a lot of the vet work. They used to help us out with the vet work. As a matter of fact, that's where I learned how to give a dog a shot. Was at Guiding Eyes for the Blind, and the wash sinks and so on and so forth, and different training things that we did for demonstration for people. But I got to say this, and I know I'm giving you guys a big plug, but I have to. If anybody has not been to a graduation, you must go. There won't be a dry eye in the place. When my wife walked in with, when we went to the graduation for Nacho, the first thing you could see was Nacho air scenting my wife.
Recognized her right away. Yeah.
Yep.
Right away.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they had people playing the piano there. I had trouble playing the radio, and you had sight impaired people playing a piano. I was like, blown away. But an amazing organization.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it. John is also a volunteer of the organization, unpaid volunteer that contributes his time and talent. And it really does take a village, as they say, or a town in this case. So thank you.
Location, I guess this would be for Joe Rena. I'm down off my soapbox now. This would be for Joe Rena. Joe, where would the actual building or a couple of buildings be?
Tom, the intent is for it to be one building.
Okay.
That's conceptually, that's what we're talking about now. And the idea, and we haven't gotten into that kind of detail yet, but, and we don't even have the magnitude of the footprint established as far as how much we're going to need for parking and building and whatnot. But our intent would be, so if you're looking at that picture right now, you can see where the existing abandoned house is in that little clearing kind of in the southeast corner there. So, and that's the high point of the property. And the property then, slightly pitches towards Mohansick, and then it pitches towards Crampon and to the north, and Sherry Brook to that larger wetlands to the west. So we would be off center on the east side of the property, but the intent is to try to stay as far forward as we can, considering the slopes, considering the wetlands to the north, so we can maintain as much separation as possible from the residential side of the property.
And entry would be off of Mohansick Avenue, Joe?
The entry would be off of Mohansick, correct. Okay. And there is an existing access point right now for the driveway for the existing building on the property.
Yeah, that comes off of Mohansick now at this point, right?
Correct.
Yeah, for the abandoned house. Now, is that just wetlands there, or is that actually a stream that runs down through there?
Yeah, it's not really a stream. It's more or less just a narrow strip of wetland. It's a linear wetland that goes along that edge there. Really, it picks up the runoff coming off of Mohansick.
Yeah.
And it kind of has nowhere to go there. It's got like a little, it's slightly depressed in that area. So that's where it goes. And then as you can see, it kind of drains. It drains to the north, down along Crampon to that larger wetlands, and then into Sherry Brook.
Okay. All right. The nearest house now on that, from that, let's say from center, looking at the red lines going south, the nearest house is right about where your cursor is now. I think, Joe, you're moving it.
No, I'm not, but it's just below that, just below the edge of the border of the picture.
Okay, so it's just off of that, was that Carpenter Road there?
Right,
Or-
correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, 12 acres, and you're proposing a 30,000 square foot at this point, right?
Right.
More
which
or
is,
less.
you know,
Okay.
right.
All right. I mean, you got the space is there as long as the land is there, and
Yeah, I
Do we
think,
have-
I think that, you know, at the least, we'll be within the footprint of what was proposed for the temple, you know, or close to that. So, I don't see this having a larger impact than that was gonna have.
yeah, and there's, to my knowledge, Guiding Eyes does not really have a lot of vehicular traffic in and out on a daily basis. I could be wrong about that. I know that they have the vans, they bring the dogs down to Peekskill with and so on and so forth. And I'm sure there is, you know, employees that go in and out, but it would probably be too much of a possibility to put an entryway in off of 202 at that point. The grades are a little messed up there, right, Joe? Or the state wouldn't let us do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have quite a gully at that point, where you're parallel to 202. There's also there's some culverts that dump into that. You've got quite a bit of running water that goes there, but you have quite a gully there. It's not impossible to get across, but frankly, I don't see the DOT allowing
Right.
an access point. I think that would be a real tough one to get.
Okay.
Tom, on vehicular movement, we know we would need to come forward with some studies and present the data, but we're
Right.
confident that although there's definitely vehicular movement, as you said, there are vans and there are folks who are coming in and out on a daily basis, and there are some amount of deliveries. It is dramatically less than the peak numbers that you all studied as part of SECRA in connection with the Temple Israel site. The peak numbers that they had for large high holidays and large events are clearly far more significant and impactful to the Mohansick Avenue corridor than anything Guiding Eyes would generate.
I got a question for you. What happened? It looks like that part of Signs Inc. their parking lot, it would be on this parcel. Am I right in assuming that? I mean, I'm looking at the red line here.
That appears to be the case.
Yeah, that's correct.
So
Yes.
what happens to them?
I think at this point, we have not studied whether that presents a problem or whether some kind of easement or some kind of issue could be resolved. We have not reviewed that with the temple at this point. I don't know whether the temple has given them the authorization to encroach in that area. Your point is well taken. We realize it's there. We don't think it's an impediment for what we're trying to do. It's a technical, legal, and title issue that if Guiding Eyes proceeds, they'll clearly have to address. So good catch. We're aware of it.
Right. And it certainly would not interfere with anything that we're going to do because we're going to be well away from that area.
Yes.
There,
No, I understand that. It's just that, you know, they're a big community partner as well. And, you know, I'd hate to see some kind of conflict where they're impacted as well.
Understood.
So, I guess in my mind, what I would appreciate is a goal where it's resolved amicably and they're not impacted.
We agree.
Okay.
David, is there, so just go real quick. You've got 30,000 square feet. So we're looking at an acre. You've got 12 acres. I think we just need to acknowledge the fact that it's prime real estate on 202 near the Taconic. Is there any thoughts on, so you're building the one building. Is there any thoughts on what else, if anything else, you have an appetite of putting on the property?
So that question had been presented to us to look at, and it's definitely something that Joe will examine more closely with Guiding Eyes if we proceed. in fairness, to give you an early response and an early analysis, given the wetlands, the setbacks, and the grading and topographical challenges that the site presents, it's probably not likely that the property could be subdivided with multiple uses on there. I know that question was raised. It might be prime property in terms of its location relative to 202. It is not the easiest site for development purposes. We actually think this is probably a pretty good use, all things considered, given the constraints that the site presents.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we were covering our bases on it, because I know we had a conversation about it.
Understood.
Other questions from the town board? Hearing none. So next steps, it seems, we got John Tegeter still with us.
I am.
All right. So next steps, it seems that from David, that they need relief as it pertains to the interchange. So the question becomes, is it a zone change, or is there some type of relief that can be provided legislatively for the interchange?
Well, I really don't think that there is a zone that accommodates this to change to. It is a pretty unique type use, in my view. I don't think it fits into, let me put it this way. I think we have to do a little bit of wordsmithing, as we just spoke about with the farms and so forth.
Yep.
And add a section, add this type of use into the interchange zone, I think is probably the most efficient way to go with this one.
Okay.
The kennel situation that we have, special permit, I really don't think this accommodates. So I think we're really going to write some sections here that just really are tailored towards what this actual use truly is, and add it into the interchange zone. The good part about that, it won't be available in other zones that it may end up impacting a neighborhood that you would never want to see impacted in that manner. So,
which makes sense.
And Matt, in fairness, I did have an opportunity to discuss this with John already. We both arrive at essentially the same conclusion. While we could remap the property into a residential zoning district, and as John's just indicated, pursue a special permit for kennels, which are allowed in the town of Yorktown in residential zones by special permit. Neither of us think that is the best, most prudent way from a land use planning standpoint. You have a very unique zone in terms of the planned interchange zone created, I think, literally over 30 years ago. It really was not utilized, certainly on this property. And I would envision, absent objection from John and Robin and Adam, I do think that we would likely file a petition for a text amendment to the planned interchange zone that would work for the site. So that's where you all would come in. That's why we're here, because I promised John and Tom that we would get a sense of the board before we filed anything formally. That would be our next step. We would file a petition with your board, start with you, review some of the potential zoning language and the impacts. And then obviously either your board or the planning board would need to be lead agency to examine the environmental and planning impacts.
Right.
Yeah. I remember that when,
sorry, Councilman.
Yeah, I remember that. That's okay. No, that's fine. I remember when one of the expansions was done on the main buildings off of Granite Springs, that there was some people that had come to the town board with regard to barking and runoff and so on and so forth, that they were concerned with. This particular site, in the amount of acreage that's there, I don't see that it's being close enough, even if you put the building smack dab in the middle by where that vacant house is now, where even if dogs bark, that most people would probably hear them, because you probably have just taking a glance at it. it's probably close to 2.5 acres that you'd have between that and your nearest house. That's quite a distance. So I think that might be a moot point when it comes right down to it.
Tom, we agree with you, but we know we would have to study it. Joe's already creatively looked at how we might grade the site and kind of put some of the impact and the building into a lower elevation than the folks to the south. So grading certainly we think works to our advantage on the property, and we know we'll need to study that.
Yeah, and the buffer that the buffer that the trees cause for the noise. Also, I boarded Taconic Parkway during the wintertime. I hear it quite vividly. Summertime, you don't hear it as much. So it's an interesting concept, but
I think soundproofing is a great tool to use in this regard. So,
yeah,
it would be soundproof facility, and
yeah,
we don't let them party at night. They go to bed at 7.
That's nice. Yeah.
Or dogs.
Other thoughts or comments from the board? No. Seen lots of shaking. Councilman Lachman, any issue?
My main thing is it is a prime piece of real estate, and I'm a little concerned with giving up something in our commercial corridor. But it all depends on if anyone was looking at it. It's been there for years. I know actually I walked the property with John Tegeter as a possible for I was inquiring what sites we have would work for a hotel. And that was one of the areas that he showed me that was big enough. But I don't know if anyone has come in looking, and, depending on where we are, of course, one thing opens up the floodgates, but if nothing's come in and we could look that way.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. But as you were just saying, and John Tegeter, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least I can tell you since my tenure, we haven't had any inquiries about this particular site other than these folks. John, am I missing anybody off the top of my head?
On this site, some apartments, but nothing commercial.
Right, but nothing commercial.
Nothing commercial, and so and I share that sentiment with Ed that it's tough to let something go, such a good commercial piece of property go, and this really is a business. So I think while not a retail type commercial, it is certainly a business and does make more sense than I think multifamily or something like that.
Right, but we never heard back from anyone in regards to that multifamily proposal. So honestly, there really hasn't been much discussion, if any, about this.
Action, no.
Right.
And Matt, I just want to respond to Ed for a moment. You all should know that Temple Israel retained really one of the preeminent real estate brokerage firms that deals with vacant land development parcels, CBRE, and Bill Cuddy and his group. And Bill was quite frank with me when we had our first conversation. A number of people kicked the tires and looked at the property, but Guiding Eyes unquestionably was the one that was most interested, and CBRE really felt quite confident that this was the use that was most real. Obviously, other people may have looked at it, as John has indicated, and this is a site right now that clearly Temple Israel is attempting to liquidate this asset right now.
Yep.
Out of curiosity, and this is probably for Bill, because I don't see Tom on anymore.
Who's Tom?
Huh? Yeah. Are you a 501c3, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So as a 501c3, are there property taxes, or are those absolved?
So my understanding, Ed and Bill, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Guiding Eyes presently pays real estate taxes in the town of Yorktown with regard to the new, what's the correct term, the visitor center,
Commerce Street Outreach.
The Outreach Center, as well as 2 of their residential properties. But Ed, the essence of Granite Springs and this site would be 501c3 tax exempt. Again, much like Temple Israel. Temple Israel
Right.
would not have
No,
been.
I understand.
they
I was
wouldn't have
just
paid taxes either. Right.
right. I was just looking to see if there was
Understood.
at least a benefit for the residents in the taxation area.
Fully understand the question.
John, any idea how many jobs it would produce? Do you have any sense?
My guess would be, probably 15 to 20 jobs.
Okay. Now, would those be jobs transferring over or new jobs per se?
Would be both. If we're able to do this, we'll be able to serve more blind and visually impaired people than we do today. So we would, training the dog is a very manual, long process. And so we'd have to add more trainers to our staff, and we'd have to, obviously staff the kennel. And so I think there would be almost all incremental jobs from today.
But John, I thought I was, because I live right off of Granite Springs. I've been seeing a lot of like other management company kind of vehicles. So I thought you guys were subbing, Guiding Eyes was hiring like, like a maintenance team, like a companies to hire the teams and outsourcing some of the job positions. Would that be something that would be happening at this new facility as well?
I don't believe so. Bill, when Bill took over operations, we kept the people that we had in the kitchen, for example, and we kept the people that we had on maintenance, but we moved them to outside management companies to, alleviate some of the work on our staff and the amount, and get people that are really expert in the food business, running food for us, getting people who are expert on maintenance, taking that over for us. But we transferred the people that we had to that organization, but they still work for us at the same facility.
So we retained all of the core of our business. We've outsourced certain things like HVAC and boilers and whatnot, right? But that's not really to the core of our business. We use experts and vendors for that.
I got to be honest, to Ed's point, going back to the whole, prime commercial spot, I know that there hasn't been a lot of people that have looked at this property, but you also didn't have a Trader Joe's that's coming in across the street, to kind of entice somebody to come and look at that property. You also didn't have, the Starbucks and the third pad site, or the first, whichever one, however you number them, that's going to eventually be developed there. So, yeah, it's a tough one.
Well, we really appreciate, we've fallen in love with the property, and we've been trying to get something done like this for 5-6 years now, but we understand everything that has been brought up, and we appreciate your time and appreciate you all listening to us.
All righty.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, is there any last minute questions from the board? Seems like there's some hesitation on the relief being requested. Is that the sense that I'm getting from everybody?
I'd like to think about it a little more myself, yeah, and just see
So
what
we need some more time to deliberate on it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Now,
David,
hang on 1 minute. Whoa. When you say relief, what do you?
They need a text change. They need a legislative change in the interchange zone in order to allow for the kennel to be an allowable use. So we would have to do a legislative add to the interchange zone language.
Okay. So what are folks' problems? They just want to see retail put in there. Is that what I'm understanding?
It sounds like that there's some on the board that feel there are other uses for that property.
Or also, wait, Tommy, also, I think one of the things is, I want to personally, I can speak for myself. I just want to sit with it for a second. Because I also do think that area is becoming something of an attraction now that maybe, like what Sergio had mentioned, that was not there before. So and then we do have to do all that legislation change. So I think it's just a matter of just sitting with the information. That's all.
All right, I'll go along. I personally, I don't see that anybody's jumping down the throats of anybody to buy this property, and that we should look into the legislation change and let's get something on the property rather than just a broken down, beat up old house that's not doing anything for us. And this is something that's going to help a lot of people. Okay, it's not just going to be another vacant store that people are going to complain about in the town of Yorktown. We do have a Trader Joe's going in across the street. That's gonna have its flash in the pan, and then it's gonna be, well, where are we gonna go? Are we gonna go to Trader Joe's, or are we gonna go to Chico's, or are we gonna go to Uncle Giuseppe's, or are we gonna go to, it's just kind of like Lowe's over there. Kind of disappointed in that, to be quite frank with you. I always said I never cared to go down to Home Depot, but now, you know what? They don't have a lot of times what I need at Lowe's, and Home Depot has it all. So I don't know if it's just the management in that particular place, but that's me anyway. So that's my spin on it. I tell you what, we have enough vacant stores in the town of Yorktown right now. We don't need more retail, because all we're going to do is get complaints about how come they're not filled. How many commercial areas do we have not filled right in the Roma building? How many do we have? Well, it's just the food emporium just getting done, but we got Kmart's been out for how many years now? I know we have things that are coming in on that. We all know what's happening with that also. So, if we can get something done that's going to improve and make the community a good place, not be a burden on the community, and give back to the community at the same time, I think it's a good thing. But I'll think about it.
So Matt, I guess the question that I'm left with, I don't think Guiding Eyes wants to push the town board in any kind of inappropriate fashion, but by the same token, as you've heard from John and from Tom, they need to address their current needs. Yep. They need to, and the temple is pushing us to firm up our the position that we're going to pursue and to get going. So again, I'll let John speak to the degree of patience that Guiding Eyes has. What I think we need to know, and I guess what I need to know, I need to deal with this seller. I need to indicate whether or not we're going to pursue this. And if I'm going to pursue this, I need to kick off with all of you in as cooperative a fashion as we possibly can at the earliest possible date. So I don't know, Matt, if you want me to just explain to John and Tom and take my group offline and then say, we may be waiting 2 weeks for the town board to think on this and get back to us. But I just kind of riffing off what Tom said, what Tom Diana said, we do need to get a feel of whether the town board would entertain this, because we can generate.
What's the time frame that you're working on? Obviously, you need to know now, right? So, but is a week possible? Can you give us to the next town board meeting? I mean, you tell me what are you working with?
John, I'll yield to you on that.
Yeah, no, of course, Matt. I mean, this is we've looked at a lot of property, and we've been thinking about this and working on expansion for 5 or 6 years. So, as I told you, if we were able to do this, we would move ahead. We would move ahead and buy it, and we'd move ahead and build an absolutely first-class facility that everyone would be proud of. It would be attractive. It would be perfectly maintained and cared for over a long-term basis. We can't, we're not a store. We're not for profit. And so, we can't offer those other things, but just like we're a great neighbor where we are today, we would take very good care of this property, and we would cooperate with everything that happens and comes along over time. But yeah, we'd like to get going, because we've had a lot of issues in the kennel over the last winter or two. And we've got to do a lot of work there. And in order to do that work, we got to get a significant number of dogs out of there.
Right.
So independent of our ability to grow and serve more blind or visually impaired people. We have an existing issue where we've got to get less dogs in that facility so we could make some significant improvements. The roof's been leaking, and we've had other issues that we've got to address.
So John,
We've got to move dogs out of there.
John, we can definitely hear that you guys already have done what we noticed as a deep dive into this and done all your homework. So I think 1 week, if David, that's okay. Is more than enough.
We've been in Yorktown for,
yeah,
for over 60
we know what
years,
kind of neighbor you are. We know you guys are a great neighbor.
We're not going anywhere.
Yeah,
we just want to. I just want to say though, excuse me, but I do want to just point the fact that for the board, I can tell you in the last 2+ years, we've had no one get to this point of their exploration on this project. Fact. I understand what some of the board members are saying, and I agree with some of those points, but I don't see how we can. Part of me doesn't understand how we can sit and hope that something else is going to pop up when we have somebody who's really a global brand who calls Yorktown home that does amazing work. So I'm hard pressed to. I understand board members want to deliberate on this until next week, but I think we should keep that in mind. And I'm telling you,
Matt, I'm on that.
I have not gotten a single call I think to John's point, other than one on this property. So hoping for something else, I'm not sure how realistic that is. I know Councilman, Sergio, you had your hand up.
So, I mean, I'm by far not a hard no on this or anything like that. I was making some points. It will still be off the tax roll. Hold on. It will still be off the tax roll. But on the positive side, it's a great cause. I love the organization. You guys will bring a certain kind of high degree of longevity to the property as an existing business. Because really, you're a not-for-profit, but that's what you guys are, and so I don't, and to Tom Diana's point, the property won't sit vacant, potentially. So, I don't think a week is an unreasonable thing. And it's up to you guys. If you guys want to vote on it today, let's do it. But I'll defer to you guys.
Could I ask
I think a week's fine. Go ahead, Councilman Diana. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No.
I think a week is fair. And I'm not trying to pressure anybody. I'm just making the point as part of an open discussion about what I've received on this property since taking office, and just understanding and recognizing, there's hope, and then there's reality, I just think that we need to be a little bit more realistic on this particular proposal, and recognize again, and I know we all do, and I'm not saying, and I want to be clear, no one on the town board has said otherwise, but for the residents at home and for the public and the people of Yorktown to understand that we have a global brand looking to expand right here in the town of Yorktown. I think that that's significant, and they've been a great neighbor. They've been a great community partner, and of course the miraculous work that they do can't be understated. So just something for, again, I wanted to make sure that the not to the board, but for the public to understand exactly what it is that we're deliberating on.
Yes, sir. I don't know who's been at the facility. Is there a class going on there now, or are you between classes at this point? Are the dormitories occupied and so forth at this point at the Granite Springs facility?
Yes,
the only reason I'm asking,
we closed. We had to close like any other school during COVID for a while, but we're back. We've been back in business since the fall, and we've got students on campus.
The only reason I'm asking,
we used to, in this class, just like every other organization in the world, a couple tested positive right before they were due there and things like that.
Yeah.
And somehow or another during COVID, we sent our people who on a volunteer basis. We didn't force anyone, but we went to where blind people lived, or people stayed in local motels, and somehow or another we graduated 100 teams during COVID, which we're very proud of. But yeah, we're back having students on campus, which is wonderful. And we did virtual graduation, so you cried on Zoom instead of cried in the room. But
oh God!
But anyway, it's great to have the students on campus.
The only thing, I'm sorry. The only reason I was asking was if you've never been on the campus and never have really explored the campus and never had one of those four-legged things walk you around with a pair of blinders on, you got to do it. Okay. And you'll understand the work that those folks do and the thousands of people they help every day. All right. Just for their own personal mobility and to get around. You can drive down to the center of Peekskill and you see those trainers out there in all sorts of weather, walking these dogs, and it's amazing. It's an amazing organization.
Matt, since I'm the one who pushed here on the timing, let me say, take the week, take whatever time you need. We the one thing that John has made very clear, we want to do this cooperatively with the town. If we're going to pursue this, we need to do this in an open and cooperative fashion.
Yeah.
We appreciate all the time you gave us tonight. For those board members that still want to think on it, go right ahead, do what you need to do. Matt, you, John, Adam know how to find me. I will, if I don't hear from you, I will circle back at the beginning of next week and see if you want us to come in and answer more questions or what. And sometime in the next week or 10 days, we'd love to have a follow-up conversation so that we can decide whether we're pursuing this or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think David, will for next week's meeting, I think a discussion is what the town board's asking for. So we'll ask the town clerk to include it on the agenda as a discussion so that we can just put a period at the end of this conversation and have a final decision for you guys.
So much appreciate that.
And again, for more than that. So thank you.
Okay. All right, everyone.
See all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to welcome back Scott Levine of Transpo Group.
In the next week or 10 days, we'd love to have a follow-up conversation.
There's Scott. And I was actually thinking that it was, we owe Scott a big apology because every time he comes to the town board, we run terribly late, but I'm actually starting to think it's his fault. So
it is his fault.
I was going to say, he owes us the apology. Yes, absolutely.
We want an apology from you.
Well,
it's tough to follow with a traffic discussion from raising service dogs from puppies. So
yeah.
I'll do what I can.
Well, Scott, I asked you to come back because we wanted to just re-engage in this conversation about your capital improvement mitigation plan. I know some of the board members had questions. I know that you've got maybe a quick, a quick high level reminder of what we were talking about.
Sure. So what I've done based on the discussions last time is I've got just a few slides as you see here. Take a step back and just explain to the board what are the options that the town has in front of it for addressing traffic issues. Talk them through. So we went in depth into the mitigation fee option. I'm going to talk through two other options. One, the more traditional method, and then the second, sort of hybrid cumulative impacts approach. And maybe that'll see the discussion and then we take it from there.
Great.
Excellent. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay, so we talked through the mitigation fee approach last time. I want to begin with talking about how things are traditionally done. The normal way of doing things. I know there's a couple of new board members, so I want everyone to be on the same page about how things are traditionally done. Then the pros and cons of the mitigation fee approach that we discussed, and then a third option, which is a sort of a hybrid approach. Okay, so the traditional approach. How this works is you get an applicant that comes in, just like the group of gentlemen that you just heard from, the Seeing Eye Dogs, come in with their application, a site plan application, whatever. The town is in responsive mode, so the town reacts to that application. You may hire a professional like us. You may do it with your staff, depending on the complexity of the project. And the town has, under seeker, the right and indeed the obligation to require reasonable mitigation as a condition of the site plan approval, etc. So the pros and cons of this traditional approach, I'm going to just walk through. This is the standard way it's done in New York State. It's really the standard way it's done elsewhere as well. So it's the most commonly used approach. There's no upfront costs. So in essence, the town board wouldn't be making any decision now to spend money. Okay, the decision to spend money comes when, can you see my cursor?
Yep.
Yeah, so the decision to spend money comes when individual applications come in. And typically, I see later on the agenda, you've got exactly this type of situation coming up. It's coming out of an escrow account. So it's not even coming out of town funds. It's coming out of the applicant's escrow account. So what this means is that every project that comes in is reviewed for the possible need for mitigation. And the outcome is a sort of rough relationship between what is causing the need for traffic mitigation. And again, we're talking about turn lanes, we're talking about adding a traffic signal, we're talking about maybe some traffic calming, changing curb lines to be more pedestrian friendly, etc., those sorts of things. So it gets you a kind of rough relationship between what is creating the need for mitigation measures and then who is paying for and constructing that mitigation. Okay, so the downsides of this sort of traditional approach, so it leads you towards a series of basically one-on-one negotiations with the individual developers or professionals, etc. And the outcomes are not as predictable ahead of time because it's really context-driven, context-specific. Because each project is reviewed, in essence, completely independently, there's duplication of effort in those professional studies in many cases. A particular downside of this approach, and what I think is one of the attractions of the mitigation fee approach, is that many projects, the professionals that represent the applicants will argue that there's no need for serious mitigation. So you might get little or no mitigation from many projects, particularly smaller projects. And so to link this back to the discussion we had, I think it might have been 2 weeks ago, Unicorn was, if my memory serves, proposing the 140 or 150 residential units with sort of light mitigation, and then more substantial mitigation, maybe in a phase 2 when there's more commercial development, et cetera, when the property is developed further. So in essence, they were proposing for their first phase, little in the way of mitigation. There was a point, I think it may have been Councilman Lachterman or Diana, who brought up, what are the litigation issues? So litigation is, it's an issue that's pervasive when development is involved. And that's because there's obligations that the town has to the community, that the town has to the individual developers. So there's lots of scope, no matter which approach the town board chooses, for disagreements between what the town, typically through the planning board, views as reasonable mitigation, and what the applicant and their professionals view as reasonable mitigation. I would say there's probably less risk of litigation with this traditional method, but it's there. There's always the risk of disagreements. So we can go into that in more detail later, but it's there. So at the bottom here, you're going to get one of 3 outcomes. So if we take the traditional approach, that runs the risk of later developers, so I've gotten quotes here, the last developer in, being asked by the town potentially to bear a heavier burden than earlier developers were asked to bear, in essence being treated a bit differently. Because maybe those early projects didn't cross a threshold of impact, right? It didn't affect traffic enough, and then there's a sort of straw that breaks the camel's back type effect. And the last developer is tasked with a fairly large bill for mitigation, and it's problematic for them. So there's that risk. Or number 2, in essence, the town accepts some of that risk, and that has issues of taxation, who pays, who benefits, et cetera. So it's problematic for the town to be in a position of bearing that risk and that burden. Or the other possibility is that development occurs potentially without adequate mitigation. So because the future is unpredictable, exactly what developments will come in, these are the potential outcomes. Okay.
Got it.
So let me move along to our next, the mitigation fee approach. Okay, so I'll be quicker here because we talked this through in some depth several weeks ago. So here, what the town expects from developers is more clearly stated up front. It's not stated perfectly clearly, so there's not absolute clarity because that would limit the town's discretion. So there's more clarity, but not perfect clarity in terms of upfront expectations. So there's less of the sort of ad hoc one-on-one negotiations, kind of like the discussion you just had with the previous professionals. An advantage here is that all development contributes in some form. So you avoid the situation where smaller projects say, well, there's no significant impact, there's no mitigation required, or very little.
Scott, can I just interrupt you real quick? So in that small impact, no mitigation. So John, would that be the spur off Downing Drive? I'm just trying to provide the board an example of what we're talking about.
So, John,
Well,
you going to jump in?
I'm going to let Scott describe it a little bit more. I mean, I hesitate to say that anything that comes in is free from any type of mitigation whatsoever. I mean, clearly, if something comes in and there's the mitigation that's needed is this, very big project, you can't expect them to do that. But there are things that any project may need to do that appears in terms of, looking at dollars as compared to the dollars invested, but their project will not work without some mitigation. So if you take, for instance, the Downing Drive spur, building that road spur may be in a dollar situation when you look at the size of the project and the investment required for that, plus the investment required to do that road spur, it may not seem appropriate. But however, I don't think the project can move appropriately without doing it in that manner. And so I think that's one that you have to be careful in which you quickly shrug your shoulders and say this project's too small to consider, certain mitigation. I think you really have to drill down in each one and look into the future to make the proper judgment and negotiated final decision to keep the town moving properly. So, I think there's some depth here that cannot be, unfortunately reduced to, some bullet points. I hope Scott agrees with me on that.
I do, John. I do.
Obviously, I think certainly they can make a case that, listen, doing the entire signal over there for a 3,600 square foot building is just way too much to ask. And maybe that's the case. But there are other things there that need to happen in anticipation of the proper intersection there that I think is reasonable to ask, and that it's not productive to reduce that to cost benefit or cost analysis, if you understand what I mean.
No, I completely understand what you mean. I was just trying to provide the board with some context because it's to your point. There is some depth here that we need to get into, which is why I wanted Scott to come back. And make our meetings late again. No, I'm joking, but it's fine.
No, I think
I asked Scott to come back, but
I think you selected a good example for context. I think that's a great example.
Right. But so then if we can maybe just riff off of that for a little bit then. So what I want the board to understand though is when we were looking at this idea, those pros that are listed on the screen were the appetizing reasons that we thought this was a good idea, mostly ensuring that everyone is paying their fair share, no pun intended, but everyone's contributing. But we're also, the other one that I really thought was important, and I think our planning department agreed, was this systematic view of the entire corridor and not this piecemealed approach that we sometimes see with the traditional method. And Scott, is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely right. why don't I jump ahead, Matt, to the third option? Because I think it's the board's, I think, familiar, tell me if I'm mistaken, with some of the points about the mitigation fee approach.
Right. No, I think we got that. Yep. So what's
Could
this?
I
one?
ask a question before we?
Yeah.
Before
Go ahead,
we move
Councilman
on?
Diana. Yeah.
The one thing that I'm a little confused on is, and on the slide prior to this, it was down near the bottom that clearly we are placing the financial risk of this road mitigation building on the first developer in, because we don't know where it's going to go. Is developer A going to take care of his own roads, the whole 9 yards, and there's no impact, but yet he's got this mitigation fee in there that's huge for something that might happen on, I don't know, Downing Drive or on Veterans Road that he has that has nothing to do with him. His stuff is flowing in and out real good. Did we charge him to? How do we know where to go with this? This is, I think, my question. How do we know what mitigation?
It's a good question. It's a good question.
We need to charge. We need a starting point, and the reason we need a starting point is because roads cost a lot of money to build,
right?
And we can't put all of it on developer A, and then developer B pays just a little bit, and then developer C pays a little bit, and so forth. So, and it may not even be developer A's problem. This is my question.
So yeah, Scott, can you answer that? So if and I think that's a good point. If developer A is coming in, but their impact, to I think Councilman Diana's point, doesn't really occur in that corridor, but may occur elsewhere. How do we address that? Is that the question, Tom?
Basically, or that they've taken care of all of their traffic issues where they are.
So let's just let's use that as an example that we've been dealing with, right? So if Unicorn comes in, they do their traffic mitigation Underhill Avenue, right?
Yep.
How does that impact, say, that Downing Drive intersection? And are they going to be expected to make some contribution to fix the Downing Drive intersection, or are they only expected to contribute for their specific corner there of like 118 in Underhill? Is that a fair example? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or are we using a bad example? John, Scott, I don't know. You tell me.
All right, so let me jump in.
I thought the word that I'm sorry, Scott. I thought the word the word that forces you to have to pay is impact. So if I plant a tree and it affects my neighbor 5 doors down, I'm paying for it, even though I thought I was only going to pay for what's in front of me. Because the key word here is impact. Am I wrong, Scott?
No, that's correct.
Tom, I'm trying to keep it layman's terms.
I'm taking that tree down. Okay?
So Scott, can you explain that to us then?
Sure. Okay. So again, to take the practical example, the Unicorn project. So if it's determined, and we'll do a set of computer models that assess where there's impact from individual projects. If that analysis says, which it's likely to say, that there's impact both at the Underhill intersection and also a lesser but still impact at Downing Drive and the new stub or whatever.
Yep.
And yes, there would be assessed under this option fractionally for both of those.
But when you say fractionally now, right? So they're going to pay a fraction of the cost to mitigate their impact don't shake your head, Councilwoman. Hold on. Into a fund, right? That's what you're saying? So they're not fixing the problem. They're just depositing a a formula-based number into a bank account, and then we hope to fix it at a later point in time.
Well, okay, so that brings us down here to these, what would happen? So one way to avoid that, and this is kind of where we left off in our last discussion, the planning board, the town still absolutely has the power to say in its conditions of approval, the physical improvements must be built, right, at the time of granting a building permit.
Yes, Scott had said that we don't even need the fund. They can just pay for the impact, right, Scott? Like, we don't have to go through the fund, right?
There is no need for a fund. A fund would be a choice that the town board makes. There's no need. There's two ways that you could deal with mitigation of development impacts without this mitigation fee approach. One is a traditional method that I mentioned a little bit earlier, where individual projects come in and you say, okay, you need it currently, here's your approval, go do it. The other option, which is the third one I've got here, is you do the upfront study. Okay, it's not as big of a study as as setting up the mitigation fee, and what this does is it prepares a project listing. So in essence, you look at the area around the hamlet, likely. You look at the area, you identify all the potential development, and you come up with, okay, we want a turn lane here, we want a traffic light at Downing or whatever, we want this, we want that. It's all also up to DOT. And then that project listing is what the planning board is looking at as they're reviewing individual applications. And your planning board is making the final decision of what they're requiring for each individual project as a condition of approval. So this doesn't set up a fee system, but this does identify upfront what is that set of projects that the town would like to see as mitigation.
And it's a holistic look, right? So the entire corridor. So we understand the impact from point A all the way to point E.
Precisely. But it stops, that analysis stops after that, and it doesn't say, okay, then you're going to pay in to do these.
Understood.
projects.
But at least we're providing the planning board with the exact, what we think would be the mitigation measures needed, right?
Correct. So if the hamlet is built out with Unicorn and Yorktown Green and the Triangle Shopping Center, etc., whatever the possible project that could be, this listing here is what the town has identified as likely needs.
And then
planning board. I'm sorry, Matt, but we could put not limited to, correct?
Yes, the town absolutely retains its discretion. So as circumstances change, as an individual project comes in, which is different than it was anticipated up front, absolutely the town retains that discretion.
Councilman Diana?
Now, is this mitigation fund going to be regional? Let's say contractor A is doing that job in town. Contractor B is doing a job on this side of town, but still has to pay into a mitigation fund. So would mitigation fund be global, or is it isolated to north side, south side, east side, west side, where mitigation may be needed? Because maybe there's more building going on over in the south side than there is on the north side. So contractor B paid all this money in, but yet this mitigation has to be done on the north side. I guess my question would be, would there be like a north side, south side mitigation fund for the impact of traffic? Or would it just be one big pot?
So, okay, this is a great question. And it gets to the issue of there needs to be a rational nexus or a rational relationship between what you're asking for of any developer in terms of mitigation and what is the impact that their project will have. So you'd want to avoid, and of course your planning board members will know this, you'd certainly want to avoid a situation where there's a subdivision in one part of town and you're asking them to kick in a substantial amount of money for an intersection improvement in quite a different part of town.
Right. So like Unicorn, we couldn't ask Unicorn to kick in money to help Barger Street on the north side, Councilman. We just couldn't do that.
Adam would not let you.
Adam wouldn't let us. But in this case, this third option, there is no mitigation fund. And it sounds like the mitigation fund is what's tripping everybody up. So this option completely eliminates the mitigation fund and allows us to go do a traffic study. And I'm just going to use the Heights overlay district as the example, since it's the one that gains the most attention. So we go do a traffic study of the Heights overlay district, and that will produce a project listing that we can then give to the planning board. And as projects come in, the planning board can say to developer A, B, C, D, or E, okay, you're coming in, great. This is what the traffic study that the holistic traffic study that was done recognized as a potential project that would be needed for traffic mitigation. This is how you offset your mitigation. Scott, is that, or offset your impact? Scott, is that accurate?
Absolutely. And I mean, if there was a decision later, you could then use this to inform the setting up of a fee system later. It doesn't preclude it. It gives you the option.
Right. So down the road, we can implement a fee system if we wanted to.
If that were a policy decision. Yeah.
Right. So is that helpful to the board? If there was no mitigation fund?
I just want to add in before you go there is that in the past, the town has accepted, I don't want to call it a fee, but money towards intersection improvements from particular developers. So that is still on the table for you as well, outside of having a designated fund with a formula as well.
Right. Right.
And it provides, it provides the backup for if you were to, as John just explained, say in a negotiation with a developer, look, a signal is needed here, a traffic light is needed. It's going to be $750,000, but we assess you're 30% responsible. That would be, instead of set up as a system, that would be subject to negotiation.
So if it's set up to negotiation, it would be after. So we could actually just set this up, mitigation for study, right? Rather than mitigation for build per se. Reconstruction or installation of traffic light, for argument's sake.
Well,
or would it be all inclusive?
Mitigation generally refers to something physical, a traffic light, a speed bump, a turn lane, something physical. It might be a crosswalk, might be park benches, or it's something physical normally. And if I was understanding the sense of the board previously, there's real concern about the town ending up with money, but not enough money to do the mitigation.
Exactly.
That's my big concern.
So that's why we thought through this third option might be appealing. There is no right or wrong answer here. None of these approaches is uniquely right. None is uniquely wrong. It's simply a question of comfort, and ultimately it's a policy decision.
This also, Scott, this will also put us in a position, since we have to deal with the state. And again, I keep just going back to the Heights Hamlet, and we know that the state roads are the biggest problems. If we're going to go do a traffic study for the 118 corridor, right, through the four corners, to the length of the Triangle Center, that also helps us with the state, because we're also going to be providing the state the opportunity to, through our traffic study, of how we can improve that corridor itself. So once, and we don't know if it's when it's going to happen, but if there is infrastructure money that starts coming down to the state level, we already have identified projects that then they could possibly go fund.
Exactly. So we previously talked about the sort of ancillary benefit of identifying and programming capital needs. All of that comes from doing this cumulative traffic study. It doesn't hinge on the decision to implement the fee system.
Right. So I think for the board, I think the thing that the board needs to just, in this case, no fund, straight traffic study, project list. So one of the things that we're trying to get finalized right now, we saw this, John Tegeter, we saw this with East Main Street, right? There was in a sense, because they did a review of the East Main Street corridor in Shrub Oak, and they provided a list of traffic calming measures, for that corridor, right? So essentially, it's the same thing that you'd be doing down the 118 corridor through the Heights Hamlet or through the Osceola, and Osceola, as well, right? You can do it through the Osceola Hamlet for East Main Street and Osceola. Does that make sense to the board? No fund, straight traffic study, project list.
Right, but who's the project list for? I mean, if you have 3 or 4 projects going on at the same time, then you divvy up the project list and all right. But what happens if you have one project going on and other projects are in question? Hint, hint, a familiar situation we're in now. And you have a project list. How do you divide the project list or, assign parts of the list to who?
Scott?
It's a great question, Sergio. I mean, you'd be relying on the wisdom of the planning board. The planning board would work that out. That's where they would exercise their discretion.
But Scott, when we say project list, can we just make sure that I want to make sure I'm even understanding it correctly. So is project list potential developments, or is project list stoplights, turn lanes. So project list is not development A, B, C, or D. Project list is traffic calming or traffic improvement measures that will be needed to be implemented. I just want to make sure we're all clear on that.
Right, but I think, Scott, it anticipates what potential projects will be coming in. It will anticipate a certain build out.
Which development projects? Yes. Yes.
I got one more
Otherwise,
question.
you're wasting your time then.
So then I got one more question. So if we're anticipating potential project build outs and we're developing a traffic improvement project listing for these potential project build outs, and one project comes in and the other ones haven't come in yet, right? So then what do? You have the initial project pay for a piece of the project listings that don't directly affect it, or are part of a project listing for potential project build-outs? And if that's the case, what do you do with the money that they give you? You make a fund out of it, right? You got to put it somewhere. You need a bank account. So you're back at the fund.
You can end up back at the fund, but yes, I think so.
So, I mean, I think one of the challenges here is that no one has a crystal ball. No one knows perfectly which development projects are going to materialize and when. And I think the challenge here is how to avoid the town holding risks that you're not comfortable with the town holding. So in the case that Sergio just explained, you'd have some projects that wouldn't, some improvement projects, traffic improvement projects that would sit. That's what would happen. So the planning board would, in their review, decide which improvement projects to assign as conditions of approval to which development projects. And if further development projects don't materialize, then further traffic improvement projects on this list would sit for a period of time. So they'd be paper improvement projects that only materialize when the development materializes.
I see. So I was looking at it incorrectly. I was thinking that if a project's coming in, part of the traffic improvement project listing would be, traffic timing or a traffic calming device down the street and around the corner, as they say in the Bronx. But that wouldn't necessarily be assigned to the project that's in place. It would be something that would be assigned to somebody else if that person or project came in.
So let me dive into the weeds just for a moment, because it's a good question. So every one of these improvement projects adds capacity to the road system. It somehow increases the ability to carry traffic or carry pedestrians or whatever. The question as to what is reasonable mitigation is how much is a development's traffic using that new capacity? Okay, so is that new capacity being used 100% by Unicorn? Well, that's a really simple situation. Then you say Unicorn must build that as a condition of approval. And if it's being used 60% or 70% or 20%, that's where we get to the challenges we've been discussing.
Right.
So I'm just trying to get a sense from them from the board based on the conversation. Are we more comfortable, less comfortable? We've gotten 3 options now. Do we prefer one over the 3? Do we not? What are we thinking? Still, so with that reaction, it sounds like we're still thinking we're going to stick with how it's been done.
Well, I think one thing to think about in any case is to try to figure out what some of these projects we should anticipate, given what we know that's going on in the areas that we're looking at. So, I think the light touch study to understand what development is going to come in and what major improvements and some minor improvements that we may need to manage that. I think that's a good starting point. From that point, you can move on to the full mitigation, fair share mitigation or not.
And I think I agree with that idea. I don't know where the rest of the board is, though. So the light touch traffic study for the overlay districts as a starting point.
Yeah,
No, and nothing more. At least we give that information to the planning board so they can make more informed decisions when applications come before them.
Yeah, this way, when the applications, like you say, Supervisor, comes before them, to your point now, at least we can say, okay, well, we know that this is going to cost X to do,
right?
Whether it's a traffic light or widening or whatever the case might be,
right?
And we feel that the traffic study is going to be an extra 10 cars an hour. All right, so your mitigation point from this is going to be X, where we now have the other. Drop my papers. The other developer, we know your project is actually going to cause 30 cars an hour to go through that intersection and cause more traffic here. So your particular payment to the mitigation is going to be a little more.
Right.
Right.
Right. And I still go back to the fact that you're also putting us in a position with DOT specifically by doing this to potentially have shovel-ready projects that can be funded once, because as you all know, we get notifications of grants, on a weekly basis, and I'm dishing them out to all the department heads, right? But but you need to be shovel-ready. So it would be great for us to have a line of shovel-ready projects so that if we get a phone call from DOT that says, hey, guess what? We're rolling in it. It's fantastic. We can start spending some money on some improvements. We know what that list looks like, and we can hand it right over to them and say, here you go.
And those grant programs are likely to be competitive. That's what the new infrastructure bill contains. It's a lot of competitive funding.
Right.
So in addition to the listing of projects, is an analysis of the benefits. So in essence, it allows Yorktown to say, these are the benefits of our project and these are the costs, and you can compare them. DOT can compare them against competing projects elsewhere.
Does that make sense to the board?
Mm-hmm.
For the record, I'm not really against, I'm not against the fund. The only thing that I can't reconcile in my head is, if we put money into a fund and somebody has to mitigate a light down the street and around the corner, and they have to put 20% in, and we don't, when does that 80% come in? And what if for the 80%, the balance of the 80% doesn't come in? Then what? How do you reconcile that? And it can't be town money that brings in the other 80%. Unless we were looking to do a project and then a builder comes in, maybe we'll share the cost because we were planning to, do an intersection or do a light or do a traffic calming device. I can understand that. But if we don't have any plans on the books to do anything in any particular place, the town's not gonna. I wouldn't offer.
I hear you 100%, and I think it's a fair statement. But that's why I think we do the traffic study without the fund, because the fund just seems way too confusing, and we can't seem to reconcile it. But I think the traffic study provides benefits that we would need one way or the other.
Right. I just, and my concern is how long do we hold the money for?
Right.
So we say, it needs to be done. And then, Kmart doesn't give up their lease and they're 9 years. So
yeah,
definitely some issues that need to be addressed.
But I think that maybe that helps us kind of get to that happy medium where we're doing the necessary traffic study. So we're prepared and we're giving that, and we're making sure that the planning board has all the data and tools at their disposal, right, when these things start coming in. But we're also not putting ourselves in a disadvantage where we're trying to create a fund that might not be fully funded and nothing gets done. I think that's where we're landing.
And we have traffic issues.
And then we get stuck with a ton of traffic issues that, can't get fixed.
And that can't happen, right?
Right, which we don't want, which none of us will allow to happen. So it sounds like we found that happy medium, right? That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Scott, John, I think we got some work to do so that we can move this forward. But I think at the very least, we're looking at those traffic studies, light touch traffic studies like we talked about, that John mentioned, to at least get us off. And then listen, once they're done, we can continue the conversation, but at least we have a starting point, and at least we have something that is going to be ready to go for the DOT, hopefully once that funding becomes available.
I like it.
Okay, deal.
Thanks,
All right. Scott, second time the charm.
It'll be before 9 p.m. I hope.
We'll get you. We owe you one on first. Don't worry.
We'll get you in before 9, and we'll have less questions for you.
We promise nothing.
Yeah.
Well
Thanks,
said,
Scott.
Tom.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night.
All righty. Look, guys, we're almost done. Next up, wireless infrastructure. Robert Gaudioso, Klaus Wimmer, Manny Vicente. We apologize for the lateness of the hour. Thank God it's Zoom and not in person, right, guys? Maybe when we get back into person, we won't run over like this. That'll be good.
Come on.
Adam's gonna have like a physical hook that he's just gonna start yanking people off the podium with. So Klaus, you guys want to take it away?
Yes. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you,
Good
Mr.
evening.
Supervisor. Members of the board, I'll be brief and to the point because I know it is late. Rob Gaudioso with Snyder and Snyder on behalf of Homeland Towers, joined by Klaus Wimmer, the regional manager for Homeland. Mr. Vicente became ill this evening, so he had to head home, so he gives his apologies. We'll give you a quick update. The Granite Springs project, which we showed you back a few months ago, pleased to report we delineated the wetlands. The DEC approved that wetland delineation. The board had previously approved its own consultant at our cost to confirm the wetland delineation. We're coordinating that effort, and then we'll be filing a full package for your review, including all of the materials we normally submit.
Great.
What we wanted to show you this evening was the Jefferson Valley site. Klaus, if you can put up the lease exhibit, let's just cut right to that. This is a piece of property on the corner of Hill Boulevard that's owned by the town and Route 6. It is largely impacted by wetlands, but we were able to again delineate those wetlands and have the DEC sign off on that delineation. We're able to place the facility outside of the wetlands, which is a positive, and we'll be working with your consultant at our cost to confirm that delineation. This is a proposed 130-foot monopole. It's adjacent to, as I said, Hill Boulevard, between Hill Boulevard and the Con Edison lines, and it is town-owned property.
There's nothing on the screen.
Klaus, can you check lease exhibit?
Yeah, it says I'm sharing.
Maybe you have a different screen to share.
There you go.
There it is.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So as you can see, this is Hill Boulevard and then Route 6 to the north. We're able to place the facility in an area that's outside of the wetlands. It would support the municipal antennas and 4 wireless carriers. As part of the lease agreement, we typically do propose not only to place the town's antennas on the facility free of charge, we also included a $25,000 payment to help offset the costs of that equipment for the town, in addition to the regular rent and the revenue share and the annual escalation clause. Again, we'll be working with your consultant to make sure they're comfortable with the wetland delineation that our consultant performed and the DEC validated. And as I mentioned, the entire facility is outside of the wetland and just in the buffer. We did some preliminary viewshed mapping. Klaus, if you can show the viewshed map. The blue is the area where we believe the facility would be visible from. And what we'll do is we'll do visual renderings and produce that as part of the package. And as you can see, the Con Edison line, which runs north to south, and then Route 6, which runs east to west, essentially, that's where the facility would be visible from. But as I mentioned before, as you know, those Con Edison towers are prevalent in that area. If you've been to the malls, I'm sure you most have, and maybe even Club Fit in some of the commercial areas, you know the service is very poor in this area. The town's consultant, Cityscape, did the report where they noted the high capacity in this area, and that's one of the problems. They also noted the fact that the carriers they need to come off the Con Ed towers to the extent they're on them. It's impossible to upgrade those facilities on the Con Ed towers because of the fact that Con Edison requires a line outage before being able to perform maintenance or equipment upgrades. very difficult to operate on the Con Ed Tower. So we believe this facility will provide that relief for the congestion that's in this area, the additional coverage, the additional capacity, the revenue to the town, the ability for the town to control the facility, very minimal visual impact, and we'll prepare that full report. So that's just the highlight of the facility. Klaus, thank you for sharing that. And again, we will provide a full package, but we just wanted to introduce this project this evening and see if there are any initial questions from you, Mr. Supervisor, or the board.
Did you say what type of pole you were planning on putting up over at Hill Boulevard?
We're proposing a monopole because we think when we do the visual renderings, it'll show that's the lowest profile. It is different than the lattice type tower that the Con Ed towers are, but it takes up a smaller footprint. And we have very little available space there, so we think that's the better option. But we want to do the visual renderings and present that to you with the options and really be able to evaluate it more fully.
And just correct me if you can, both properties, Granite Springs and Hill, are they parkland?
They're both parkland, so we have to go through a full process with your board. We have to go through a wetlands process. We have to go through a parkland alienation process with the state legislature. It's a big lift for us, but Homeland Towers is willing to take on that responsibility.
So do you know timing wise on that parkland alienation?
So we think we really need to have a home rule request from your board sometime in the spring to be able to get on. I believe it's the June legislative agenda. That's what we'd like to shoot for. We're on track for that. We're going to try and stay on track for that. And with your help, I think we can certainly make that happen.
Other questions from the town board?
So, I'm sorry, does anybody want to go first?
Go ahead, Serge.
Okay, I'm sorry. So, right now, where's the next closest tower if you're standing on the corner of Hill Boulevard and Route 6?
If you look to the north, it's not a tower, it's a Con Ed tower. There's antennas up there. Problem is, it's pretty far. It's up on top of the hill. And the problem is it's too far away to get the in-building coverage into, if you're in Dick's or if you're in Club Fit. And there's just an overcapacity of users. If you look at the Cityscape report, which was not prepared for us, it was prepared on behalf of the county and the town. It talks about the dense nature of the usage in that area. So as I mentioned before, the Con Ed towers are also problematic because of the usage on those towers.
Yeah, and you can't work with that if you have to update. I mean, I'm an IT professional. I'm a senior analyst. I own my own company, and the level of capacity that it has increased. I mean, just exponentially. I mean, every iPad, every cell phone, every laptop, every device, everything streaming. I mean, it's the amount of capacity has just gone through the roof.
You're
and
correct.
I think that's why we have a lot of dead spots, and that's why you have poor service. Even though you seem connected, the service isn't really up to snuff.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, we definitely have to address that issue. So, I mean, just from that standpoint, it's a valid project.
Thank you.
Now there's 4 buildings on that site. Is that what I'm seeing when I looked at that?
No, it's what we showed is we showed really 5 locations, usually a couple hundred square feet each, plus 4 plus the town's location. So we always reserve space for the town, and then what we do is we have space for each of the carriers. They're not really doing buildings anymore. They're doing small equipment cabinets, usually 2 or 3 equipment cabinets. So we've shown enough space both on the tower and at the base to be able to support those equipment cabinets and the antennas.
So there'd be when you say equipment cabinets, they're what size? I mean, they're like 200 square feet. You said?
No, so it's 200 square feet overall for the platform. The cabinets are much smaller. They're the size of a small refrigerator. Picture that as far as the size goes.
Got you. Okay. The problem with towers is nobody wants to see them, but everybody wants to use them. And bottom line is that this is the future. You got to have them. You got to have the connectivity that you need in the area to, like to Sergio's point, everybody's streaming everything. The kids can't get in the car without streaming something. So
We're doing it right now, right? I mean, we're doing it on this call.
Yeah.
It's also emergency services. Like I said, we reserve the space at the top of the tower for the town. Police, fire, ambulance, they're all using wireless. It's critical infrastructure.
because I know that's coming up with us too, right, Supervisor? We got.
Yes, it is.
Yep, that's coming up very shortly. That we're going to be enhancing our radio system throughout town. To include our working departments and police department.
Yep, it's good stuff. Looking forward to that. But thank you very much. Is there anything else from the town board, Luciana?
No, I just wanted to bring up, there's a lot of negative spoofing that comes from having these towers or these beautiful boxes there. If there's anything that you can offer us to comfort our residents, that would be important, because I know a lot of it is spoof. Times have changed. Technology has changed. Protection has changed. But, I remember when the Styrofoam cup was the culprit. So I just want to make sure that we do address that. I'm against the fear. So.
What we will do is that that's absolutely right. We will have a third party prepare a report that will talk about that issue, and we'll provide all the details and all the data and all the science behind it. Absolutely.
Robert Klaus, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Supervisor. Thank you.
Have a good night, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a good night.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a Summit Street Paper Road. We're going to welcome Michael Grace.
I don't want to hear 5 minutes, Michael Grace, because I know what happens then.
Michael, you there? Grace?
Yeah. Matt, I'll be recusing myself from this conversation.
Okay.
And I've sent a letter to the clerk's office.
And you should say the reasons for the record.
It'll
become obvious in a minute, but
the property is adjoining my property, and I'm part of the applicant on it.
Very good. Thank you.
And Michael, don't tell us it's going to be 5 minutes, because we know what that means.
Putting the stopwatch on now.
All right.
All right.
Grace, the floor is yours.
All right. Essentially, you got to give me 1 second, because I got to turn down the other computer that you guys are broadcasting on.
He doesn't want us to hear ourselves.
I hear Adam.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite the delay.
There's a delay. Yeah, exactly.
What did I do? What did I do?
Yeah, there's a few minute delay. That's the issue. Anyhow, Mr. Lackerman is interested in having you relinquish your option to create a town road out of the little stub of Summit Street that was never taken as a town road or developed. Essentially, the roads up there were part of the Depot Plaza subdivision back in the 1920s, I believe. And this is an undeveloped portion of Summit Street that extends past Montrose and is abutted by the Lackerman property and that of Mr. Pete Schmidt. Basically the Lackermans and Schmidt deeds have a recital that they would own to the midline of the unimproved road so long as it remains unimproved.
You want to just, can you see my screen there, Mr. Grace?
Yeah, good. All right.
I'm just trying to make sure we get this up here. Let's see.
You were close. You had Mosman there.
Montrose, here you go. So Summit and Montrose right here.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes. So you see there's a driveway.
Right here?
That's the little spur of Summit that was never developed, nor taken over by the town for town road purposes. Basically, the law is on a subdivision back in those days. Presently, any subdivision that would map a road would have to either bond its, actually create the road or bond its improvement. Back then, they didn't require that. So in order to ensure access to the lots that were created by the subdivision, the deeds had a recital, standard recital in them that they owned that the property lot that was sold, or the lot that was sold, would own to the center line of any abutting roadways. So the actual roadbed to the center line of the map road is owned by Lachterman and Schmidt. What the town has is the option to has a option to accept for that property for road or highway purposes only, because by it being mapped, it becomes an offer of irrevocable offer of dedication. Mr. Lachterman is looking to make some actual physical improvements to his property, which would incorporate part of the old mapped right-of-way to the center line thereof. And before he makes that investment, would like to have the town, for some consideration, relinquish its option to accept the offer of dedication for road purposes. And it would seem to be, so basically asking you to relinquish something that give a quick claim deed. You really don't have any legal right, title, or interest in the property other than the right to use it for road purposes at some point. But the road, that spur dead ends to a rear yard of a property on California.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, you can kind of see here, right? Like, and I think we have our highway superintendent on as well, but
yeah,
I don't see where you would put a road without going through someone's house.
No,
it's not even it's not even an even lot, Matt.
On a paper road, it was initially planned, as Michael said, in the 20s. It was laid out such that it afforded that accessibility. The only thing that I believe is incorrect that's been stated so far is that it is used for road purposes only. The actual fact is whether there's any town infrastructure on that road, in other words, sewer, water, that would give the town a right to have a necessity to have right of way on that particular road.
Yeah,
but I don't believe there are any infrastructure issues on that road.
No, there is a private sewer line, believe it or not, that was installed and should not have been installed without the consent of Lachterman and Schmidt. So we don't know where it is. Essentially, we would like the town to conceptually agree to for some type of nominal consideration to relinquish or quit claim their rights, whatever that may be. And basically, it's the right to, the option to improve it at a later date for town road purposes, so that it can be put to use by Mr. Lachterman. So you're really not, he owns it essentially. So you're not selling him ownership. You're just selling him, it's just so he has uninterfered right to make an improvement on it. So it's, we've done this in the past. We've sold spurs, road spurs that don't, that dead end. I know we've done it at Mohegan Lake a couple of times. And usually at that point, what we've done in the past, we've sold stuff that we don't really own. But it's really what is required that I guess Ed at some point in time would look to quiet title by a legal proceeding under the real property law. The other thing that would be commonplace in a situation like this is that the town would go to the neighbors and ask them what they want to do. But the problem with that is none of the neighbors have any right or title or interest in the road anyhow, other than Schmidt, who has it to the center line thereof on his side of the road. So we would like to at least get conceptually that the town is amenable to it, so that we can go forward and have the property surveyed. Let's kind of stake out where that sewer line is, and go to the next step of allowing Mr. Lachterman to plan his improvement on his property that will spill open to that right of way.
So I have one
Yeah.
question. If
Dave, that
someone had
picture
put-
is killing me of you. You're killing me with that picture.
It's
Yeah,
better
we
than
want the hat and the glasses.
It's better
not
than the
my
stereo.
main picture. It's my happy picture.
I want to smile at you,
Dealing
but
with
you
ice
keep
for
looking
2
at
weeks,
me.
but
with
you're
that
lucky
picture.
I'm smiling.
Dave, what's
So-
your question?
My question is, Mike, if indeed there's a private sewer line in there,
Right.
Is it somewhere in that right of way? In other words, the property that Ed and Mr. Schmidt owned, that they do own to the center line, and we do have a right to go in there and do what we need to do. Should
Yeah.
that be the case, how does that unfold with respect to a private sewer line, and if there's a problem?
Yeah, my understanding of the private sewer line that was put into that road, that property that dead ends, that's at the end of the dead end, and Michael Quinn, I guess, gave permission for him to put it in there. It was probably okay to do that, but probably not okay had he, unfortunately, either Mr. Lachterman or Mr. Schmidt should have raised a concern when the backhoe was in there.
So if
Anyhow,
we do this quick claim, it
Yeah.
becomes Mr. Lackerman and Mr. Schmidt's problem
right.
with the sewer, right?
Right. Essentially, and they can deal with the neighbor as they see fit. And the idea is we don't even know where that is, and when we survey it all, it may be a moot issue anyhow.
Adam,
from a highway standpoint, my feeling is this: we've got tons of paper roads all over town. They're a maintenance nightmare.
Yes.
I can't tell you how many calls we get a year about trees on paper roads, and just because it's a road, they think it's our responsibility.
Right.
So anything that we can get rid of and eliminate the responsibility for maintaining, as well as getting on the tax rolls, I think is a home run. So
You don't have,
I
you don't have to
think-
maintain
and
paper
Dave-
roads.
Dave, to your point, it's kind of a funny situation when you really dig down, when you do the deep dive. It really is not owned by the town anyhow. So
JT just said that. He said we don't have to maintain them. But when the call
Well-
comes in, John, we're going. And Dave's the one going.
Yeah.
Right.
I
That's the
realize that,
problem.
but it's not our responsibility to maintain something that's not ours.
Right. But the
Right.
fact of the matter is, somebody puts you on written notice that the tree's going to come down. The tree's going to come down with what they believe is town property. But John, feel free. I'll refer the next 20 calls to you, and you could explain.
Yeah.
No.
And I have your extension. I'll refer them right back.
It's very
It's
easy to
okay.
pontificate when you're not getting the calls.
It's okay. So I just want to go to Adam real quick on process. Thoughts
Yeah.
on that, Adam?
Yeah, so technically, I think we need to demap the road. So under the town law, it should be referred to the planning board and set down for a public hearing if the board wants to go that route. In theory, the planning board, I think, has 30 days to respond. Whether they'll need that much time is another story. I suspect not. This doesn't seem controversial to me. Once that's done, I mean, I think Mr. Grayson and I have some things we need to work out, but procedurally, that's what would happen. And then once that's done, the board can adopt a resolution, authorizing the abandonment of the road and the transfer of the property via deed.
All right. So
yeah, I've got
question. Michael,
What?
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When you look at the adjacent homeowners' deeds, does it show their property line in the middle of the road?
What's funny about it?
Because
I've done
that's
enough-
been sort of a questionable thing.
Right. It should be carried through the chain of title, because all of these roads were created. All these paper roads have that. Every deed has that. Actually, I dare say, if you looked at any one of your deeds at any one of your houses, as long as you're abutting a public thoroughfare, you probably have that language in your deed. The thing happens is that right and title interest to the center line thereof disappears once the road is taken over for public purposes. So the thing is, in situations like this where that has never occurred, it remains entitled to the adjacent property owner, but it becomes less than marketable title because of this overriding right of the local municipality to accept it for highway purposes. So you
So it
wouldn't
It doesn't show up on their deed as their property.
Yeah,
Because
you wouldn't.
residents.
Yeah, you don't want you wouldn't make everybody encroaches upon the 50-foot right of way, as you know, because the approved right of way is only half of that usually. but you wouldn't make a substantial improvement on it unless you knew that you had the town relinquished its right. And here they're looking to make a substantial improvement on that portion, and would like to do it uninterfered with a future election to make it a town road, which is never going to happen, as we know.
Right.
So then,
okay, thank you.
From that standpoint, so Adam, can we refer to planning tonight since they're meeting next week?
Yeah, you can.
So why don't we make the motion to refer the application to the planning board?
So moved.
And that should be to Dave too. Dave should have an official response back too.
So we'll make a motion. I'm sorry. So we'll amend the motion. So we'll make the motion to refer the application to the planning board and the highway superintendent.
So moved.
You have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye.
And,
Any opposed?
and I've got no. I think.
Yes.
I think
yes. We have your abstention.
An idea of a public hearing may be unnecessary, but I actually think that it's probably very worthwhile, because in some ways you'll educate the public as to what these so you may start getting rid of a lot of these stupid little
a lot less phone calls, Dave.
I think a lot of confusion, and I spent like 3 hours at Cornell with the person that specializes in this, and paper roads are really a nightmare. It's a very confusing things. They're based on infrastructure and based on a lot of different things. Some of them, people's property lines go to the center line. Some of them don't. It's really very convoluted. It's
yeah, no, and I mean, it's a late night, but you could do hours lecture on this. But thank you. I appreciate your time, guys. It's late. Go to.
Thank you, Mr. Grace.
All right.
Thanks for hanging out and waiting for us.
Take care.
Thanks for staying up.
All right. Bye.
All right.
Thank you, Mike.
Let's see. And thank you to our Highway Superintendent Paganelli for jumping in and helping us out with this.
Thank you.
And John Tegeter, thank you too.
And John Tegeter, he better not have gotten. Nope, John's still here. All right. Last item.
Thanks, John.
We have this. I'm sorry. All right. We have this issue that's been brought to my attention that I wanted to share with the board. There has been legislation proposed and language included. It's two separate things, just to make sure that we're clear. So there's legislation that's been introduced in the state legislature. Hard stop. In addition to that, the governor has included language in her proposed budget that has to do with accessory dwelling units. We have been, I've been in a number of meetings. This is an issue that municipalities across our region are very concerned about. We've heard from municipalities such as North Castle, such as Newcastle, Cortland, Mount Pleasant, Somers, Mamaroneck. Anyway, the list continues to grow. The New York Conference of Mayors and Municipal Officials has officially submitted a memo of opposition to the proposal. I want to make sure that we are articulating to the board and to the public what the proposal does. Essentially, it creates a one-size-fits-all blanket approach to governing accessory dwelling units. So Yorktown has in its code an accessory dwelling unit process for people to be able to create accessory dwelling units. It requires a variance from the zoning board, provides very specific setbacks and conditions that are specific to our community. What the proposal would do is basically provide a blanket. So it would be the same for Buffalo, New York City, North Country, Mohawk Valley, Hudson Valley, so on and so forth. It's a very significant issue that is raising a number of significant concerns. And I wanted to bring it to the town board because there are many municipalities who are voicing their opposition. And I wanted to raise it with all of you as well, because it has a direct impact on our community. I also wanted to have John on because I asked John and Adam to review it, and they provided me some colorful commentary. But I don't know, John, Adam, I don't know if you want to provide any insight to the board and to the public about what the legislation proposes to do or what the governor's proposal proposes to do. or if I covered it sufficiently enough.
I mean, at a very high level, and John can get into the more nitty gritty, but at a very high level, it's a usurpation of our home rule. It invalidates our accessory dwelling unit law, essentially. It effectively eliminates single family zoning in the town, statewide, really. It creates a form of rent control over these units. It caps the amount of rental increases, and the percentages are pegged to either CPI or 3% cap, whichever is greater. It eliminates the ability to have an owner occupy requirement after the first year. And, I can go on and on. If the landlord charges more than the rent control amount, the landlord could be subject to punitive damages for doing so. It's some heavy-handed stuff.
Yeah.
John?
Well, it's hard to know where to begin with this one. It really is something that I have never seen come before. And I have a lot to say about it, and I've only gone through it once so far. I think the main thing that you have to realize is what it does to the neighborhoods. This requires that you allow accessory dwelling units on every property in town that has a residential structure on it, not just residential zones. It says every residential property. So if you have a residential structure in a commercial zone that grew up there out of, over history, and it's non-conforming, that you have to allow an accessory dwelling unit to be built in it or on that property.
John, can you just quickly explain, because I assume people know all this stuff, accessory dwelling unit. Can you explain what that is and provide an example of it?
Well, yeah, it's a, think mother-daughter, or think that you converted your garage to an apartment and you're renting to, your wife's cousin's friend or something like that, or a college kid or something. It's basically essentially a separate apartment, either within your own home, downstairs, upstairs, or in an accessory structure on your property. It is distinct. It has its own, all the typical living requirements, kitchen, bath, et cetera, et cetera. So it's an apartment.
I could convert my basement and move somebody in there without ever coming to the Yorktown board or planning in Yorktown. I could just bypass the whole process.
Well, not exactly. You have to come, but it becomes a ministerial action. It's no longer discretionary in any way. So in other words, it's like getting a building permit. All you have to do is make sure you comply with the technical requirements, and then the town has no choice but to issue the permit. I mean, there's some, if we denied it, there's an appeal process which we'll lose if they have complied with those things. The funny thing about this, which I don't think I've ever seen the state get involved in, is they actually have written bulk requirements in here that we would have to follow. Certain minimums of sizes of apartments, maximums. They are, if I read it correctly, they are mandating that the setback for an accessory dwelling unit is only 4 feet from a side or rear lot line. Our sheds are 10 feet. I mean, they're 10 feet. And so now that's a direct contradiction of what we already have. So if somebody comes in for a shed on one side of the property, we're going to make it 10 feet. But if they come in for an accessory dwelling unit, they can go down to 4, which will be, 8 feet away from the other guy's accessory dwelling unit. It changes the character of your single family neighborhoods to an extent that we no longer can control. And so therefore, it's really, to me, a dangerous proposal. And I just want to read to you what our law has in accessory dwelling units as one of the standards that we look at, that the zoning board looks at. This is number 2 under paragraph D, and the section is 300-38, by the way. It says, it is the town board's intent that neighborhoods zoned as single family primary remain with their single family character. The town board finds that there may come a time when the number of accessory dwelling units in a zoned single-family neighborhood will adversely affect the character thereof. The zoning board of appeals shall deny a special permit for an accessory dwelling unit should it find that the number of such units, including the one proposed, will adversely affect the character of a zoned single-family neighborhood. So what that does is the town discretionary power to look at the character of the single-family nature of that neighborhood, so it doesn't get overwhelmed with too many of these types of dwelling units. And I think that's important. We're the only ones, since we live here and work here, that know what our character is. And, you know, people up in the state cannot even begin to understand what our neighborhoods are like and what their character is. So,
yeah, and John, to that point, the NICOM opposition memo states, while the goals of this legislation are laudable, the one-size-fits-all proposal is impractical, applying definitions and regulations on localities that have vastly different zoning schemes.
Yeah,
that's exactly what you're saying.
Yes. And, you know, the other thing is it's really poorly written. I think that people, if it gets enacted in this, with this wording, we will get twisted up trying to figure out how to apply it, because there's contradictory and very unclear passages and requirements in here. As Adam did say, they are rent controlled, and the tenant can actually sue the landlord. Landlords can sue the town. Those are provisions in the actual law. So it's really something that I've never seen, and I'm stunned by it. And
Well,
I think
I'm sorry, the state needs to stay out of Yorktown, I'll tell you that. But yeah, I mean, it just sounds like it's, I mean, just if you had an accessory dwelling unit in every house, you know, in a neighborhood, it would really change the character of that neighborhood dramatically.
Yeah.
Not because it's rent controlled or anything like that. It's just because it would really drastically change just the neighborhood's atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in a way where it'd be I think much more overcrowded. But,
for sure.
I see that we have our building inspector on, John Landy. John, anything you want to add on this topic?
Unfortunately, I don't know what was said. I just joined. I apologize. I didn't know it was on. I was looking at the law, and I just feel that it would be really taxing on our fire department, our roadways, our sewers, our water department. It would just overburden the town. It would inundate it with apartments. It's just, I don't find it to be a good thing at all.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your input on that. So to the board, you know, this is something that we're facing. To be clear again, from a process standpoint, you've got two paths here that we're unfortunately up against. You've got the one path, which is your traditional legislative path, because there is this legislation that's been introduced in the state Senate and I believe the state assembly. Secondarily, and I think even more threatening, is the fact that Governor Hochul included it in her proposed budget for 2023. Not the exact language, but very, very similar language, which again continues to pose identical problems. And so this is an issue that we want to make sure, you know, and I want to be very clear on the fact that this is also not a partisan issue. I mean, you've got Mike Shaliro. See, I can never say his name, but North Castle Town Supervisor, Democrat, ardently against it. Newcastle Supervisor, Democrat, ardently against it. You know, spoken with Cortland Town Supervisor Rich Becker. Like I said before, I can rattle off all the elected officials because the supervisors have been meeting on this. The WMOA officials have been meeting on this, the Westchester Municipal Officials Association. And it's just causing concern across party lines. And so, again, wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. Wasn't sure where the town board would go. I do have a resolution that I typed. If you want, I can read it in and you guys can listen, you know, we can decide if we want to pass it. just to make sure that we note our opposition for the record.
If I might add a little bit, Matt, I was at a building inspector conference today, and a lot of us were talking about it.
Yep.
And I have to tell you, all of them, everyone I spoke to is very, very concerned about it. It just, they're stunned, they're shocked, and they just can't believe that anybody would even want to try and do this. That it's just going to be harmful to every town.
Yeah. Well, it impacts every town. It's literally one size fits all. It doesn't matter if you're Yorktown. It doesn't matter if you're Schenectady. It doesn't matter, if you're Penn Yan. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be down in Nassau or Queens or New York City. You're playing by the same set of rules in this thing, and it just doesn't make any sense, unfortunately. So I'm happy to read the resolution as a board. If the board feels that it's
please do, Matt. This is it's
Yeah.
a huge overreach, and we really need to stand up for our town. What's the biggest complaint we have anytime anything comes to town is it's going to change our neighborhoods. Well, this is definitely going to change every neighborhood in Yorktown.
Or our infrastructure can't handle it. That's the other one.
Yeah. Infrastructure, our public safety. There's environmental issues that, we're not going to have the opportunity to properly vet and review. It's a mess.
Mr. Landy made great points.
It is a mess. All right. So here's the resolution. Whereas the New York State Senate is currently deliberating on S4547A, which amends the real property tax law, specifically accessory dwelling units, by superseding local zoning as it relates to residential zoning. And whereas Governor Hochul included similar language in her 2022 State of the State, as well as language within her proposed executive budget, which would create a blanket standard for accessory dwelling units across New York State. And whereas should these proposals be adopted either through the traditional legislative process or as part of the 2023 budget for New York State, local zoning and home rule will be abandoned by permitting apartments as of right on any lot regardless of its zoning with an existing residential use. This is something that John Tegeter was mentioning before. And whereas the Yorktown Town Board believes this language as proposed will dissolve the character of our community by limiting local oversight on key issues, including environmental protections and infrastructure, impact on schools, and emergency services. And whereas the Yorktown Town Board strongly opposes a one-size-fits-all approach that does not recognize the existence of local laws that already allow for accessory dwelling units within our community. And whereas the New York State Conference of Mayors and municipal officials have publicly opposed the legislation, calling the one-size-fits-all approach impractical, considering the different zoning schemes across New York State. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town of Yorktown opposes S4547A as proposed, and be it further resolved the town of Yorktown opposes the proposal within the 2023 executive budget dealing with the creation of accessory dwelling units, and be it further resolved the town of Yorktown urges its partners in the state legislature, as well as the governor, to preserve and protect local home rule and local zoning powers. Any discussion on that?
Second. Send it.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. Very good. I will
Thank you.
make sure that we share this with our partners on the local level as well. Like I said, there is a lot of conversation and action on this. That concludes the work session portion. We do have some resolutions to get through quickly. We will authorize the Chief of Police to attend the New York State Chiefs of Police Association Conference. We will authorize the town to join HGAC by Cooperative. We will, let's see, Central Garage recommends the town board to deem items obsolete and sold at auction, which is a 1997 GMC. From the Finance Department, authorize the comptroller to process a budget transfer. This will help actually fund the rewiring of the library, the Johnson Hart Memorial Library. We are going to award bids for various chemicals for the water pollution control plant that are listed in the agenda. We're going to award a bid for the grit and screenings removal and disposal for the water pollution control plant. The typo there, plant. Let's see. I'm sorry. That bid's going to go to SpectraServe Inc. We're going to award a bid for sludge and grease removal and the digester cleaner. That should be going to Fred Cook. And then we're also going to authorize Weston and Sampson to perform an environmental review for the Old Hill Farm solar farm proposal. That's what we have. We have a motion to accept resolutions.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? No opposed. Motion's carry. There's no other business before the board. We will make a motion to adjourn.
So
Motion
moved.
to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
All right. Good night, York.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, Yorktown.